What is up, booktube? It is Monty. The other day, actually it wasn't even the other day. At this point, it was like 2, 3-ish weeks ago. I was watching a lot of Kayla's content, and I said, you know, it'd be really fun for the month of February if I decided to do the buzzword reading challenge in a singular month. I do all of the prompts, I vlog it all, and I get it out to you. Because I think I came to this realization after two things. One, when everyone was doing their like 12 books by 12 friends thing, I knew I couldn't do that because I would have to do it all for one video. And I came to that realization after Erin told me that, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And then two, I was watching Erin do her buzzword reading vlog for the month of January, where she did, you know, the 5 W's. And I said, that's really cute, doing one of those a month, having, you know, regular, consistent content that you can kind of plan your life around. But again, I knew that couldn't be me. One, because January at that point was almost over. And two, again, I would have to do it all in one go. So that's when I looked to the month of February. And then I said, how can I make this easy on myself? Because I'm still on this book buying ban. I can only buy one book a month. Clearly, buying 12 books is not going to work. So I said, let me read some of my arcs because my NetGalley is a little bit backed up. Some of these are a teensy bit of a stretch. I'm going to go ahead now and throw the TBR up on the screen over here. I did a nice little, I went into Photoshop, made a little graphic-y graphic. So this is the TBR. Obviously, for this first one, we're starting off with What's Not to Love by Austin Sigmund Broca and Emily Wibberley. Y'all know if you watch my roughest draft reading vlog, I didn't like that book, wasn't it? However, we're going to start off with it. I believe this is Academic Rivals to Lovers. I think this was their first foray into a non-Shakespearean retelling in their YA romance days. So that's what we're going to start with. I have the audiobook downloaded from my Hoopla. So I'm going to listen to that while I'm at work. I might listen to it while I drive home from work. That's what we're going to do. But before I go ahead and throw it off to future Monty and give you guys these lovely little title screens, I think that's what I'm going to call them, that were also inspired by Lala's. They're inspired Kayla's. I think it was her reading the Goodreads horror book. She did something similar to this. And she does stuff similar to this in a lot of her reading vlogs. They're not as quite as polished. But you know what? It's a first attempt. It's a first attempt, okay? We're trying to level up the reading vlog experience over here. So before I go ahead and throw that off, I have a package. And I know what this package is. This package contains my most prized bookish possession at this point, which I know, right? Like, what could my most prized bookish possession be? Jade Legacy. And I know you're saying to yourself, bitch, you have 2 copies of the book already. However, this one, where is personalized? So this one's special. Oh, and it's blue ink. All the other ones that she did for the Illuma crate are not blue ink. So I have a lovely copy of Jade Legacy. The dust jacket is a little beat up, but it's fine. My most prized bookish possession is here. So I'm gonna go ahead now and throw this off to future Monty. He's gonna tell you guys what he was thinking about when he was reading What's Not to Love. I am gonna try and do this a little vloggy, but there are 12 books. They're a little bit chunky, so I might do a 50% check-in, and then when I finish the book, I just don't, I say I don't want this to be a feature film, but I did plan for this to kind of be feature length, so you also might want to grab some snacks. It's been a minute since we've been here doing some skincare, so that's what we're gonna do today while I get ready for work. Now, to be fair to Miss What's Not to Love, I've only read like 7%, which is almost like half an hour, maybe 45 minutes of this little audiobook that I have from Hoopla. Shout out to Hoopla. I mean, yes, these are all arcs, but you know, I'm not always so prompt. And I hate it here. Already, 7%. I already know this is not gonna be a good book. I was hoping that the roughest draft would be a fluke, you know, that book wasn't for me. but their young adult stuff could be. I don't even remember what my thought process was when I asked for this book. I don't know what circumstances led to me asking for What's Not to Love from this little duo, but I did. I have it. We're here. My issue is that the first 7% has literally been our main character, whose name is irrelevant to me at this point, being sick. The entirety of the first 5 chapters of this book is the girl being sick. The first page, she's feeling nauseous, and her mom is like, I don't have to pick you up from school later. Why am I dropping you off? You're sick. And she's like, no, I have a test. It's like, bitch, just stop. You're sick. Why are you going to school if you're sick? To like show up your little academic rival, it's foolishness. Fucking foolishness is what it is. So she goes to school, even though she's sick. I think this came out in the middle of the pandemic, so I'm surprised people weren't all over that, but whatever. It was written before a pandemic. Then she takes her test, and immediately after, she's in the nurse's office. In her entire personality is just, I have to be the best. I have to be the best. Not because I am the best, but to show everybody I can be the best. And it sounds like she just want to be like her sister, who we just were introduced to right before I went to wash my face, who seems to have like flamed out. We know her sister is like 26. Her fiance left her. She lost her job. She had to move back home to San Mateo, which I wouldn't want to live in San Mateo, so I get it. I wouldn't want to be her either. But it's like, girl, your little high school rivalry is fucking foolishness. I also want to point out that I think it's a little bit ridiculous that the love interest is described as having brown hair. There's the cover. I mean, he's having blonde hair. On the cover, that's a brunette man. That's brown. That ain't no blonde-haired man. Anyway, so like that's the entirety of it. I'm also immediately let down because this seems to be a single perspective. I don't know who decided that romance can be a single perspective, because I promise you it cannot be. I mean, have I read it? Yes. But oftentimes I think it is done poorly. I don't think that you can convey the necessary emotions for me to believe it. And I oftentimes think that specifically in this kind of a trope, in academic rivals and enemies to lovers, people don't want to do it because then we would see that both characters have foolish reasons for wanting to remain enemies of the state, as it were. But at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, but why do you hate each other? Like, your entire animosity is based on wanting to one-up each other because you're both smart. It's just foolish. It's foolish, especially in a single perspective. In a single perspective, I don't like the one perspective. I want to jump. It's been 5 chapters. We haven't done any jumping. I'm starting to lose hope that that's ever going to happen. So, hate that for me. I actually really do hate that. There's something about a single perspective contemporary romance that just, they don't ever slap. They don't ever slap because the emotional arcs, I feel a little bit incomplete. I feel like it's hard for me to believe that both of these characters were hating each other for petty reasons, and that both of their petty reasons just kind of dissipated at the same time, because authors very rarely give their supporting characters good motivations for me to believe that. So I don't have hope and faith here. And any goodwill I had towards the project is kind of based on the fact that the book I read from them previously, The Roughest Draft, was a 1-star book. So there's no, oh, maybe there's like hidden depths. I don't believe there are any hidden depths. So that's where I'm at. Those are my complicated emotions. What's up, you guys? It's been an hour and some change since I last updated you guys, which doesn't feel like a long time. But now I'm 23% into the book, so a lot of reading has been happening in the time that we have been apart, and not a lot of it has been good. So I have discovered that the thing that is going to bring our, academic rivals to lovers together is the 10-year high school reunion of a class a couple years, 10 years ahead of them, honestly. It's their 10-year reunion. The person who was supposed to plan it is like this hot shot investor man, and he just kind of fell through, even though you would assume that Mr. Hotshot Investor Man would have like an assistant, or could have hired an assistant specifically for this purpose, but for whatever reason, he didn't do that, and the reunion is in shambles, and so the principal has delegated it to the two academic rivals because all the teachers hate them, and they're like, you need to separate them because they are doing the most. And instead of doing that, the principal said, actually, I'm going to make them work together on this project, and maybe I'll give them, like, the one who does, like, the better work, they'll get to be the valedictorian. It'll put them over the edge. And it's kind of like, that doesn't even make sense, but whatever, it is what it is, right? That's what's gonna bring them together. Where I'm at, this is definitely not dual perspective. We are definitely trapped in this little girl's head, and I hate being in her head. Everything about her life is like, here's the thing, I can read about an organized character. I think, like, in my off time, in the time that I'm not watching booktube videos, and the time that I'm not trying to, watch other people's reading vlogs, gather inspiration, see what's happening in the community that I could, like, infuse with my own flavor or whatever. I love a good planning video, right? I love watching people put down stickers and write in their little schedule that is clearly for the camera, because why would you put all kinds of personal information on the internet? Like, they don't. So, like, I love seeing the stickers and the little pens and, like, their little doodling time. I get a kick out of seeing organized people organize their lives. I have come to the conclusion that I will never be that bitch. It's not the life for me. But I really love seeing the planner girlies just invest in being a planner girly, It's something that has always brought me a good time. When I'm done watching booktube for the time, I'm like, let me go watch some planner videos. Let me go see these girlies do their thing. But hearing about this little book character, I hate it. I hate everything about her little organized life. I hate how clearly her little emotional arc is supposed to go from her being this stuck-up person. From this stuck-up person who doesn't, who has to be the best because she wants to prove that she can be the best, and like this and that, and becoming more like her sister, who was like moved back in and just kind of used to be a type A personality but is mellowed out and is seeing where the wind blows her. I don't care about that journey for this character. I don't care about that journey for this character because I don't think that it's matching with the romance that I'm supposed to get with this character and her academic rival. I don't think that these things are compatible. I mean, let me not put it that way. I think that they are compatible in a way, but at the same time, they don't feel compatible in how the story has been written, because I feel like at 20%, there should be something going on here, but I'm just so bored with this little girl and her sad little life, and how she is doing the most. She is in like every AP class imaginable, and like, I knew people like that, right? Like, I went to school with this girl. I knew this girl, and I was not upset with her when I was in school. So there's something about how Austin and Emily are writing this girl that is sending me through the roof. I will also say what's sending me through the roof is the audiobook. Like I said, I got this through Hoopla, but the production on this audiobook, did Austin and Emily, did they upset somebody at Penguin? Did they like ruffle some feathers? Because the audiobook is bad. It is bad. And this is what I mean. So, in the middle of a sentence, you will hear the cut and it'll go to a different take of the narrator, Elizabeth Corlett, reading the sentence and then jump back to the dictation that she was using for most of the book. Because I'm also not seeing the chemistry. If the chemistry between your little academic rivals to lovers is only like, here's my thing. Here's what I want to say about rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers, that whole thing. You can have sarcastic banter between any little dynamic. You can do grumpy sunshine, you can have sarcastic banter. You can do friends to lovers, have sarcastic banter. Sarcastic banter, like this little back and forth bullshit, doesn't only exist between people who do not like each other. Like, this whole, like, oh, they're little enemies or whatever, it gives big, you know, oh, he bullies you because he likes you energy. That's what it gives me. It's like, oh, you guys are so rude to each other because you guys like each other. It's giving, y'all have no emotional range. Y'all have zero emotional availability, and it's not cute. It's real. It's honestly sad that y'all are so emotionally unavailable that all you can do is be like, I hate you. Let me fuck you against a countertop or some bullshit. It's sad. It gives pathetic. That's what it gives me. So those are my thoughts on the whole, like on the trope in general, because that's all, like, because I'm saying I don't see chemistry, and I feel like the comeback to that is, oh, but the banter, Monty, the banter. Didn't you hear the banter? No, bitch, I did not see the banter. So I'm gonna go. I'll check back in. I'm like Aaron, we got fucking sirens. I'll check back in once I have read to like the 50% mark, 75% mark, and I have something of substance to tell y'all. Full disclosure here, it's been at least a week, because last week was when I was doing, at the time of filming this little clip, I was doing daily reading vlogs, and so there was no time in the day for me to read things for my daily reading vlog and sneak in this February TBR project. So it's been a really long time since I've talked about What's Not to Love. And What's Not to Love is one of the worst books I read this year. Definitely not the worst. Definitely not the worst, because it's not worse than Razorblade Tears. But this book was just god-awful. Here's the thing. Part of this, it's two-pronged. One, I am definitely not the target demographic for a YA contemporary about these two enemies to lovers. But second, I don't even remember the love interest's name, but that man was weird. Over the course of the novel, it was revealed that he had like no interests of his own, and that he had just like done everything he could to constantly be around our female narrator, which I thought was very, very strange. At the end of the novel, is kind of addressed, like he decides to take a gap year, and not go to the university that they both got into, in order to like find himself outside of his love interest, which I thought was wonderful. But at the same time, I was kind of like, why are y'all together? Like, why are we even going to pretend like this is like a facsimile of a healthy relationship? Their little academic rivals to lover situation, I didn't like. I think I went into this hoping that it would kind of be like the roughest draft and that we would get both perspectives. But here we only got the female main character's perspective, and I thought that it suffered. I also think that between What's Not to Love and the roughest draft, I just don't know if I like these authors doing enemies to lovers, because both of their enemies to lovers situationships were poorly executed, I thought, and they were definitely on the sillier side of why these two people had a relationship turn sour. And I ultimately have no interest in reading anything from them again, because I mean, I guess it's not totally fair, because both of the stories that I've read from them were similar relationship dynamics, but I don't really care to see if they can do friends to lovers, or meet cutes and like happy, and like I don't believe it. I don't really vibe with their character work. I didn't vibe with the writing. I don't want to recommend the audiobook. In Books and Lala's most recent video, Kayla played a clip. I think it was from the Mercury Boys section of her video, where the narrator had to like go in and re-record, and the same thing happened with this book. Constantly the the audio would shift, and you could tell that there was like a production issue about something, and the narrator had to like re-record at a later date for whatever reason, and it just was not a seamless reading process. And I'd never had that happen in an audiobook before, but I feel slightly less alone knowing that it happened to somebody else. And they actually took the time to play it for y'all, so you can go over to her video and watch that. So, and maybe it's a little fitting because I am doing her readathon in a vlog style that I'm attempting to mimic. So maybe I cursed her unintentionally, but overall, what's not to love is just it's. I just don't recommend this book. So that's 1 down, 11 to go. I'll check in with you guys with the next book and my thoughts there.
So I'm 5% into We Play Ourselves, and I don't know what I thought I was doing when I requested this book. I have not gone back to read the synopsis of what this is supposed to be about. So far, we have a main character who has left New York under a shroud of perceived controversy. She's a playwright of some sort. There's something happening. It's giving very like the end of season 5, beginning of season 6 of Glee, when Rachel's little television show flopped and she had to run back to to Lima, Ohio, and start coaching the Glee club. Only she has run to her friend in Los Angeles, and her friend in Los Angeles may be moving back to Sydney. So it's like she out here. What she actually did has not been revealed yet. And I'm listening to this at 2 times speed, which is usually a pretty safe baseline, because I understand that I listen to a lot of things sped up, so like maybe my perception is off. But even at 2 times speed, this feels so slow. But I never try and jump into a book going like the fastest I can get it. I try to be like reasonable. So I start off at like 1.25 and we slowly work our way up. But after listening to this, I'm just like, there's no way I can listen to this at 2 times speed. So I'm gonna have to speed it up. That's apparent. But outside of that, like, it's just okay. I have no idea. I'm not going to go read the synopsis. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep going blind. But I don't know what about this synopsis made me want to request it on NetGalley. That's the part that is like, what was I thinking? So that's where I am. I'll check back in. With any luck, I'll finish this relatively soon. I don't have to be at work for about 2-ish hours. So I'm going to go run some errands, stop by the library, return some things. And then maybe by the time I get to work, this book will be good. I don't know. I'm also doing reading sprints later tonight, so that'll be fun. That'll be exciting. So I'll check back in once I have thoughts to give y'all. But right now, it's head empty. Head completely blank. So I've read like 27% of this book, and I still have no idea what about this appealed to me when I asked the publisher to send it on NetGalley. It's not bad. It's not a book that I would go out of my way to read now. I think my logic was, I requested this in like 2020, and I said, I'm going to read the adult books. I'm going to be in my adult book bag. And so I went on NetGalley and I said, let me request some adult books. And we are still following Cass in Los Angeles, trying to like piece together what happened for her to leave New York. There seems to be this like established female play director that she may or may not have had an affair with. There seems to be another up-and-coming playwright that she may or may not have had a falling out with. Her and her agent had like some kind of argument that we don't know the details to because Cass can't remember. And so it's a lot of like piecing it together, while also she's staying with her friend, like the gay couple that's like maybe leaving Los Angeles soon. Their neighbor is like this documentarian lady, and she is like hanging out with like this group of teenage girls that have like an underground fight club going on. And so like that's also in this. It's just it's a hodgepodge of weirdness, and I don't quite know how it all clicks together, if it even does click together, how I'm supposed to like process all of the events that are happening. But I think I like it. I don't know. It's very different than anything I've read this year, for sure. And it's entirely different than anything that I've read in a long time. But the part of me that likes like weird friend groups is enjoying it, even though the girls themselves are they're not the subject of the book. Like we don't follow them. But I almost wish that we were, because if we were following them, then I feel like it would be better. I don't know. It's definitely a lot to think about. Definitely a lot that is going on in my head. But so far, it's like a 3-star, a high 3-star, just because I have like nothing to compare it to, and it's a lot of really just decent background noise. Good morning. This is horrible lighting. But here's the thing. Yesterday I tried to update when I finished. I got home, I did some reading sprints with the people, and the update that I gave was just not giving. It was not giving at all. And it was a hot mess. I tried to do like a little unboxing because my Lit Joy Crate editions of the Mortal Instruments finally came. They're stunning, love them, but that footage is just unusable. I refuse to put that on the internet. So I'm gonna update you guys here while my car gets nice and toasty for me. So I finished We Play Ourselves. I wound up giving it, I think, I still don't know how to rate it. And here's the thing. So we had that whole storyline where Cass and her neighbor friend were going to make this little documentary. And she was like really excited about it. And as the story progressed, she started finding out things about the documentary that left her like feeling uneasy, let's say. Let's be very generous. We'll say she was feeling uneasy. I think it was a little bit more than that, but we're going to go with it. So she was finding this out. And we found out more about why she had to leave New York. And it was not what I thought it was. She did not have an affair with the director lady, that old French woman. She did have an affair with one of the cast members. And she wanted to have an affair with the French lady, but she didn't. And what the scandal actually was she had like poked another playwright in the eye. And like the girl had to like wear an eye patch. It was weird. It was like a whole weird sequence of events. And this playwright was also just very weird. Like there was a whole description of the play that homegirl went to go see before she could, you know, to tell us how she poked this girl in the eye. And it was a weird play. There was like a coat hanger abortion. And then as she was bleeding out, she was giving her boyfriend a blowjob. And then she died at the apartment, and he like made eggs. It was wild, okay? I said, I don't know if I needed to know what this play was about, because we don't ever get to really find out the ins and outs, the details of Cass's play. So I'm like, I don't need the person you're envious of play. Like, I didn't need that. I didn't. So we had that going for her. And then it's just a lot of that. It's a lot of the documentary and her unraveling there. And then she kind of forges this unlikely friendship with the girl who she poked in the eye. And then Cass like goes home to, I want to say Connecticut. Maybe I'm incorrect. No, New Hampshire. She goes home I think it's New Hampshire. She goes back to the East Coast. She has to leave LA because that man finally went back to to Sydney, and so her friend that she was friends with before they got into a relationship and him are like broken up, and the friend is trying to move on, but he can't really move on because Cass is still there, and Cass is low-key running out of money. Although I will say the fact that Cass was able to make $50,000 stretch for as long as she did when she was living in New York for a hot second, she was not working at all the entire time that she was in Los Angeles. I mean, $50,000 is a lot of money, but she made it last. She must have been Miss Penny Pincher herself. But it was okay. I started the book not understanding what the book was, and I ended the book not really understanding what it was. I thought we were going to examine like toxic female friendships because Cass and the neighbor lady had this weird dynamic that was going on. And it was kind of that. But it also kind of wasn't. It was kind of also like the lies we tell ourselves and like what is really reality, and is there I wouldn't say I don't think the book goes as far as to say is there reality, but I do think that it does talk about constructed realities and the realities that we make for ourselves, one, in order to just get through life, and two, to kind of get to places that we might not be able to get to if we didn't play pretend a little bit. I don't know. It was really interesting, and I did enjoy it. I would recommend it, but I wouldn't know who to recommend it to. I do think that going in blind was a good way to go. I can't say that I went in 100% blind, because at one point I did read the synopsis and I did say, I want to read this. This sounds like a book I will enjoy. But by the time I actually got around to reading it, I had no idea what it was about. So shout out to Past Monty, because you did good. You did good. Also, apologies to the publisher, because I definitely asked for this almost 2 years ago, and I'm just now letting y'all see this video. But it was good, so thank you. Hopefully you trust me again in the future. But I'm gonna go because it is the 15th, and so I need to go to Target, and I'm gonna pick up that book, and then I may get some coffee. But you're gonna see me in the next clip reading not that book I'm gonna go buy, but a book that I should have read a long time ago, but I didn't.
Okay, hello. It is Monty, some version of Monty. Technically, I think we're in the future because We Play Ourselves was one of the first books I read for this project. But it is time to read the March buzzword, which is location. And for that, I have something exciting. I have Kings of Bmore, which I'm assuming this is a physical arc because it says, arc mailing on the box, which I feel like, I don't know if I don't work in publishing, but I feel like I don't know if I would have put stickers like that on this box. Not that it matters, because okay, inside there's like a little attempt to make it festive, a little packing slip, some artful tissue paper. It's cute. Here's the thing. This is not an unboxing review, but I do feel like if you're gonna make a themed box, I don't know, maybe it's just because I've seen other authors get a theme box and like the box is cute. I think it's fine. It doesn't feel like a lot of effort went into this box. I would have much rather preferred like y'all to not, because this costs money, right, to get this onto this little like black box, and I would have just preferred a bubble mailer if that's all y'all were gonna do. Anyway, there's a little letter from Eric. I'm not gonna read this little letter. Maybe I'll hold it up. You can pause. Maybe it's in focus. On the back, there is his tour spots. Oh, no, those are his favorite spots in Baltimore. He has another book. So this is not a debut. His other book is called Here For It. It's a collection of essays. So maybe this is, okay, YA debut. But he has, like I said, that. He also has written for Dickinson and Better Things. Okay, don't watch either of those, but if you want to get a feel for him, I guess you can go check that out. But this is Kings of More. All I know about this is that it's out in 2022 May, and it's set in Baltimore, which is why I'm going to read it. So thank you to Penguin for sending this out. Again, I feel like y'all could have saved some money on this. Or if y'all were going to do this to like actually do something with. I don't know. They didn't ask me. I'm not on the marketing team. But I'm going to end this clip here. I will check back in once I have actually read some of this. So yeah, this doesn't seem to be too long. Okay, it's like 400 pages. But it's okay. We're going to get through this, guys. We're going to do it. I'll check back in a little bit. Well, for you, it'll be a little bit. Who knows how long it's going to be for me.
It has occurred to me that I have not updated anybody on my thoughts on this goddamn book that I want to DNF. So I updated you guys last time in the little conference room of my apartment complex. If there's background noise, I'm sitting in the car and the little sun visor thing is crinkling. So I don't think Editing Monty is going to be able to get that out of the audio, but that's what you're hearing. Anyway, I am reading this goddamn book over here. I actually have it in my bag. This book. Reading this. Kings of More, right? I told you guys in the package that when Penguin sent this to me, I felt that that was an unnecessary use of funds to put together that little box for this whole little book, when a little regular bubble mailer would have been just fine. And having read this book is not good. It's not good. I am currently on page 312, so I have less than 100 pages to go till I get to the end of this book. And not only was the packaging that they sent to me unnecessary, this book itself feels very unnecessary, and it feels very rough. Like, the references in this are just like, what are we doing, sir? Like, Mr. R, Eric, what are we doing? Mr. Thomas, like, why are we here? What am I supposed to gain from this? Because let's just start with my expectations and what the book is delivering. Because I feel like if I start with expectations and I give you what the book is actually delivering, you are going to understand why I'm upset. So I expected this to be a story of two friends who were going to like have a little weekend fun situation, and one was going to move away, and it was going to be the end of that, right? It was going to be very lighthearted. I thought I was getting some black boy joy. What I got instead is, yes, we have these two friends, Harrison and Linus. One of them is in fact moving away, and we are doing this little weekend adventure situation, right? So one of the friends decides, hey, you're leaving. You just told me. I'm going to plan out this whole little thing. And in the course of this, he plans to take, I think Harrison is the one that is staying and Linus is the one that is leaving. But honestly, whoever is leaving, it doesn't matter. So the friend who is planning this goes to his little stage manager friend and is like, I need you to help me because my parents have, the little Find My Phone situation, except we can't use Find My Phone in the book for whatever reason. So it's like this random third party Where's My Child app. So I need you to like have my phone for this day so that like you can continue to do these things, because my parents are going to look and see where the fuck I'm at. Even though my parents think I'm going to work and they, whatever, hyper vigilant parents, I guess. This is like the most convoluted reasoning to include these parents, but also like not include them, because we have all of this shit about, the friend who is staying, who's like trying to plan all this, who was like, oh yeah, my parents are like very overbearing. But not only is he doing this random shit behind their backs, we find out later that his sister is also like doing some random shit behind their backs, but it's okay because his sister is like an adult. Although like maybe she had some like random mental health crisis while she was at university, and that's why she's back living with them. Foolishness, right? But whatever, we have this whole little plan. Then, in addition to this storyline between these two little black boys trying to enjoy their last weekend together before one of them moves to South Carolina, we have this whole like interstitial with the stage manager friend who was having like this sapphic romance with a shoplifter at the store she works at. Unnecessary. Would have cut every scene in it. And like at first, like when it was just like a paragraph at the end of the chapter, it was fine. But when they started getting to be like multiple pages of these little interstitials, I don't understand why they're here. Not only do I not understand why they're, I mean, they're clearly building towards like some kind of suspense element in this book. Like we're like the friend that is helping, like the little stage manager friend, she is clearly involved in a subplot that's about to like burst open in the last part of this book. So like I do understand on a technical level why they're there, but if I was the editor and I pushed for these to be included, I would be upset with myself. And if I was the editor who didn't tell Mr. Thomas to cut these, I would also be upset with myself because they're horrible. They're so, like, this character is so tangentially related to the plot that when we are with her, we have to do, it's like a full detour away from the actual story that we are living in and experiencing to have this whole little moment. It's unnecessary. It's not really adding what I think they thought they were adding, and I hate it. As for the actual events of the weekend, we quickly discover that the friend who is planning all this is a horrible planner. Not very good, and I don't even understand if he and this person are actually really great friends. So first, he was supposed to like help this little friend kiss this boy. Can't do that because the boy is on a sudden secret fishing trip in fucking Virginia. So he's not even where the friend who was planning this thought they were all going to be. So as a detour away from trying to get him to kiss this boy, he says, why don't we go to the African American Smithsonian? So that's what we're going to do. Only when they get to the Smithsonian, these two people are separated. And so these two friends who are supposed to be spending this weekend together aren't really together. And you have the friend who is like moving away, looking at these like depictions of Jim Crow era South Carolina, like what's happening here. And the other friend, the friend who is planning it, who was also, side note, a huge musical theater person, which I appreciated at first because we were getting, you know, like Thoroughly Modern Millie references, and Thoroughly Modern Millie is that girl. I do prefer the movie, even though it is highly Orientalist and like it's very racist. And the stage production attempts to like clean that up. You can't clean it up. You just can't. You just got to accept the is anti-Asian as the hell. But that aside, we are getting exclusive Hamilton references, and I hate Hamilton with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. And so every time we get to a Hamilton reference, I want to gouge my eyes out of their sockets. I understand that is an unpopular opinion. It is what it is. Don't like it. Don't care for it. It's weird seeing it. But then at the little Black History Museum, we are getting this man who is also getting harassed by a security guard. Like, that's the entire plot of them being in this facility, is that they're low-key separated, and one of them is being harassed by a security guard while they try to link back up with the person that they got disconnected from. And knowing he's being harassed by the security guard, this man continues to like make scenes and like do foolishness in this. It's weird. The whole scene at the little Smithsonian is weird. I don't understand why we went there. We didn't really get anything out of it. And then it was just a way to inject some like random racism. Then there's like a scene of them like squabbling, and eventually they leave Washington, D.C., and they get back to Baltimore, where they're supposed to be from, and they're going to Pride. And again, like, we have this scene where the friend who was like planning all of this tries to get his other friend to use an ATM, and it's like, ooh, this is a big moment for you because like you're scared of ATMs. And he's like, the friend who is leaving and like moving to South Carolina is like, but I'm not. Like, I knew in my head I was actually gonna have to use an ATM at some point in my life. Like, I'm good. And the friend who is planning all of this is like, but what do you mean? Like, this is a really big moment. Like, it's in the plan. It's just ass from start to finish. The writing is clunky. The characters are boring. We have all of these plots and things that go nowhere. And I'm pretty sure these two friends are gonna like have like this random romance in like the last 2 pages or some shit. And ultimately, as much as it pains me to say this, I don't recommend this. I remember requesting the e-galley of this because at some point past Monty thought that he was going to enjoy this. I have zero recollection of asking for this physically, because at some point between me asking for the e-galley and getting the email from James that was like, hey, do you want a physical? Usually I'm like, yes, because I'm going to read a physical before I pick up my Kindle. But for this particular, I don't recall that. Maybe I did. Maybe Past Monty was like setting me up, but this is just bad. And so now I am the owner of this little paperback edition of this book that I don't like, that I don't think is very good, and I don't recommend to anybody. Like, even younger readers, like the actual demographic who need this to like see these two queer black characters. Oh, that's what also bothered me about. So when they get back to Baltimore and they're going to Pride in Baltimore, look, I have been to Baltimore exactly like one time in my life. Like, I guess technically twice if you count both trips to the airport, because my family is from the great state of Maryland. Okay, they are from the great state of Maryland. Half of my aunts and uncles still live in Maryland, or I have an aunt, I think she actually technically lives in Washington, D.C. Again, like, they are Maryland people born and bred, okay? So, to me, I definitely associate this, specifically the city of Baltimore, with black people. I understand that there are other races of people who live in the city of Baltimore. I get it. But when these two little black boys showed up at Black Pride, and they were like, not both of them, but I think it was the friend who was like planning all this stupidness, he looked around and was surprised to see so many black people. I was like, but like, just this thing logically, okay? Like, do people make, special trips out to prides? Yes, I'm sure that those people exist. I don't know if Baltimore Pride is like high up on like the vacation destination. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if like that's the pride trip people are like super planning for. Maybe Baltimore Pride is the moment. Maybe it's the most lit pride of them all. Don't see it happening for Baltimore. So I was like, when you live in this city and you see all these black people every day, I don't understand why it would be so shocking to you, a black person, to see, like, if these were these two white boys, maybe I could get it. There was something in there that felt like a disconnect, especially for these people who live around black people, who see black people all the time. Like, to a black person where blackness is the default, seeing queer black people, that it wasn't meshing.
So I'm back in the little conference room situation that is, I feel like I have vlogged in here for this particular project more than anywhere else, so apologies for the sound. I did finish this. Kings of Beedmore is done. It is completed. And when I first started reading this book, I thought, I'm going to take out the part where I talked about the packaging that Penguin sent this in, because it was just unnecessarily mean when I hadn't even read the book yet. Having finished this book, I'm going to give this book a single star. For me, I like to think that like maybe the youths of America will actually get something out of this that I simply did not get, that went over, that book fell, that went over my head. I don't think that's entirely accurate, but I don't want to believe it in my heart of hearts, right? The thing for me is that the book just, I don't think that it knew where it wanted to land tonally, because we did have this thread of Harrison being, I don't want to say like chased, but like people in authority were definitely side-eyeing Harrison in a way that I didn't really think gelled with like the black boy joy element. And I guess like maybe there's an element to like being a black boy in a city like Baltimore and being aware of police presence, and just like that's always something that you have to deal with. And as someone who grew up in the middle of nowhere, that was like not a part of my experience. Also, the lighting in this is just horrendous. I look awful. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that like when I was a small black boy, none of my hijinks and adventures were really like, oh, I'm gonna get shot by the police. And that was very much how this book ended, was like, nobody got shot by the police. But there was a scene with his mom and him, and she was like, oh, I need to know where you are because the police are going to shoot you. And I was like, I very much get it. You look at someone like a Tamir Rice who was just having fun in the park, and then bam, dead. You look like, Trayvon Martin, who went to go get his little Arizona and some Skittles, bam, dead. So like, people, Breonna Taylor just laying in her bed, bam, dead. So like I understand the point, I understand like the threat, I understand acknowledging it, but for me it was weird. There was also this element of the creator of this check-in app being at the party that our main characters found themselves in at the end of the book, and how like the check-in app maker was some like super wealthy person, when I just don't understand. I understand that there are definitely a lot of apps out there, and the makers of those apps are probably far more well off than I would assume. But for something like check in, I don't understand, because it just seems to be a tracking app. And Harrison makes fun of Linus for having an old phone, and not like an iPhone. And iPhones come pre installed with Find My. And for a really long time, you could definitely be tracking your children, or not even your children, just like regular family members, by adding them to the Find My network. So I don't understand like why this check-in situation was a thing that existed, when you would think that his parents would just use the Apple ecosystem and like not have a third-party app, and like you wouldn't need to have this weird convoluted thing where his sister and everybody that he met all kind of knew each other. It was just bad. It was just a bad book that ended on a really poor note. I will say that I think at some point during this little discussion I said that I thought Harrison and Linus were going to get together, be like a little romantic situation. And that's very much not what happens. They don't, at least from how I read the book, that's not really what happens. I do think that that possibility exists, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, if there was like an adult continuation of this, that would happen. But also, I also did, this is something that really, it bugged me. So as a person who's a fan of musical theater, not to the degree that Harrison is, there were some elements that of like references to musical theater that I thought just didn't work. Like they're at a party, like this really big party, and well, I guess it's not really a big party. It's more of like an intimate gathering of people that Harrison doesn't know, and the DJ puts on a song from fucking South Pacific, and he's singing along to the song from South Pacific. And then the book ends with this like another Hamilton allusion, and I really have to say that I understand that people really love Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton. I understand that people think it's a really great piece of musical theater, that, you know, it's one of the shows that offers, you know, Black and brown people consistent work on Broadway because, you know, of the way that they cast the show. So, like, I understand the appeal, I understand it, but at the end of the day, I personally hate it. I hate it. Alexander Hamilton was a horrible human being. Horrible human being who would not have fucked with Harrison. And so Harrison and fucking Linus ending the book with like this little quote where Linus is quoting, I think it's, what is his name, John Lawrence, in a letter that Alexander Hamilton wrote to Lawrence, and how Lawrence is buried in South Carolina where homeboy's about to go move to. Like, it left a bad taste in my mouth, because Alexander Hamilton would not have fucked with you. He wouldn't have fucked with you. He would not have fucked with you at all. And so the way that the Hamilton references were the most consistent musical theater references, everything else was like a one-off shout out. There might have been a couple of Wicked references, maybe. That was like the other one, which, okay, congratulations. But Hamilton being the driving force, when Hamilton did not care about no black person, definitely wouldn't have fucked with Harrison, definitely wouldn't have fucked with Linus's broke ass. Like, no thank you. Hated it. So, like I said, for me, it's a 1 out of 5. For the youths, for the children of America, who this book is actually, you know, geared toward, I do think that there's something in it for them, even if it's just, you know, a fun time. I don't think that they'll be as bothered by the random side quests, or how everybody seems to know each other in the end, or the way that the family is depicted in the story. Because even though I didn't really like how the family was depicted in this book and how they had conversations with each other, I did like that both kids actually, Harrison and Linus's dads, well, Linus's dad, his mother to a lesser extent, but at the end of the book, she comes back with a really heartfelt moment. But then all of Harrison's family, so his mom, dad, and his sister, they do play a really big role in the story. And I do like that YA is going back to that. And I am hopeful that in YA going back to having parents and family members in the mix, that it'll make for, at least for the character, the authors of color, they're holding it down for the family members. Like, they're holding it down for these people being in the lives of our main characters, and so I do appreciate that element. But for me, it's a pass, and I don't think that I would read another YA book that Eric Thomas comes out with any kind of quickness at all. So that's what I thought on this one. I'm gonna go, and I think that Past Monty read the next book, so I'm gonna throw it back to Past Monty with his thoughts on whatever's supposed to be next.
Have I started listening to From Little Tokyo? No, I have not. But I wanted to film this little intro-y clip for it because I know that if I do, then when I get to work, I will actually listen. So the audiobook for this is 10 hours. So I probably won't finish it today because I'm likely only going to be able to read for about an hour and a half at work. So at 2 times speed, roughly 3 hours of the audio. So I should get a pretty decent chunk in to talk to you guys about when I get home. So that's my game plan.
In the interest of full disclosure, it is the next day. It's Wednesday, and we're still doing skincare because I feel like that's what I said I was going to do in the car. But I did listen to all of From Little Tokyo yesterday, and I had a good time. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Here we follow Rika. She has a last name, but we follow her as she has an unlikely meet cute with Hank Chin, who is a famous dancer trying to get into acting. And the story is part love story because it's YA contemporary, but I have a hard time categorizing YA as a romance, even if it does have a happy for now, just because it's like, these are 17-year-olds. So to me, it's just a contemporary, but there is a happily ever after, happy for now situation. But the story is really about homegirl trying to find her mother, trying to connect with her, and all of the stuff that is going on there, because Rika was told that her mother died as during childbirth because she was like 15 or something. And so she's been raised by her 2 aunts and their 2 daughters, so her cousins that she just calls sisters because, they were raised as sisters essentially. Love that for her. So she's trying to find herself, trying to find her mother, and Hank Chin is kind of in the middle of all of that. And it was, like I said, it was really cute. We got to deal with her dealing with being half Japanese and half white, and Hank is Filipino Chinese, and so he's dealing with that. And there's like a whole support network of other famous Asians that are halfies, as they call themselves, which, I don't know, I feel like I've read a lot of biracial identities from Black people, but I haven't read so much in like the Asian diaspora. It's usually just like, oh, we're Asian, but not so much of the like biracialness within the Asian diaspora and in the Asian community. So that was something that I really appreciated reading. I really appreciated seeing depicted in the story. There was also just a lot of like Japanese history and several references to Japanese internment and how that kind of decimated a whole culture and a vibrant community within Los Angeles, and how they had built back after the internment. So like, it was really interesting. I liked it. The story where she was trying to find her mother, as it was happening, I thought was a little bit ridiculous, because I was like, why would her mother think that her daughter was gonna like find all these clues? But then when they were at the end and we got kind of an explanation of the things that had happened, I was like, okay, that actually does make sense. Like, it was, I wouldn't call it like a bait and switch, but it was like those really weren't left for Rika to find, they were left for somebody else to find. So I appreciated that. And overall, I would recommend. I haven't read Sarah Kuhn's other books, but I did enjoy this one. It was really easy to listen to. I appreciated a lot of the conversations that we were having in it. And yeah, I read it after Valentine's Day, but I do think if you were trying to recapture the feels, I don't know, if you just need a catalog of books that are going to make you happy in your back pocket, I say add this one to the list. And that's all I have to say. There's really not much to say about this book that wouldn't spoil a lot of the events, but the romance was nice. The cousin dynamics were fun. The community aspects of the story was nice. There was some like inter-community bigotry from some of the other people in Little Tokyo, both surrounding why Rika's mother, like just her, like as Rika was learning about her, but also about Rika being half Japanese, half white. There was some bigotry going on there. That was a little bit, it was a lot. So I wouldn't say that it's entirely lighthearted. There are definitely some serious moments where Rika is facing some really bigoted comments, but they are pushed back against, obviously, and the character is called out for a lot of the things that he says, and so it's kind of like, it's there, but just know that going in. But I'm gonna go, because I still need to go get ready for work today, but you're gonna see future Monty introducing the next book and talking about that while I go do what I need to do. What is up, you guys? It's Monty, and I'm here to discuss my thoughts on the May book. I think the prompt for May is directions, and for this, I chose a poetry collection. And I chose this one because it was the only arc that I had that featured some kind of direction. I figured that like if down the mountain was a direction, then rising is a direction. Like we're going up, obviously. Um, I'm like there are definitely books on this list that you're gonna see me read that are far more bendy, far more loose interpretations of the book than And We Rise. So And We Rise is a nonfiction poetry collection type thing that chronicles the civil rights movement of the early 50s into the late 60s. It covers a lot of things that you would have talked about. Well, I always say this, it's going to cover things that you talked about in school, but if anything, being on Twitter has taught me is that some of y'all were not paying attention in your history classes, and some of y'all just really had bad history classes. Um, so maybe you didn't. Maybe you did not cover this, but I do feel like the civil rights movement of the late 60s into the early 50s is pretty broadly discussed in American schools, mostly, during this lovely Black History Month time. And so I do think that a lot of the information here is familiar to most readers. There were some times where I was reading this book and I was like, is this for it? Because Penguin Teen sent this to me, so it's being published by one of their, I think it's under Viking. I think that's the imprint that it's with. But so it is marketed for children, and I was reading this and I was like, is this appropriate for children? Do children need to be reading this? Because I was reading the poems and I was like, I don't know. Maybe I was in my sensitive era, but I was like, if they can read Huckleberry Finn, and I know people read Huckleberry Finn because I had to read Huckleberry Finn as a child. So I was like, you know what? Maybe they can read And We Rise. And maybe I'm just being a little, it's very intense, but it's also just like history. And I don't think that there was anything. There were a couple of things in the poems that um that I was learning for the first time. There were some things in the poem that I wasn't learning for the first time. I do want to say that with the number of times that people talk about Claudette, I don't know if we can continue saying that no one knows who Claudette was. I don't know if we can continue saying that, Claudette was like this forgotten historical figure, because y'all bring her up every year. Every year we bring up Claudette. So, like, there are some aspects of the poems that I was just like, okay, like how new is this information really? And sometimes I was like, okay, yeah, this is something that is probably underreported, let's say, at least in terms of mass general knowledge. I did appreciate a lot of the poems. Some of the poems, I feel like I read this as an e-art, and I did use the NetGalley Shelf app because I knew, and that's part of what drove me to make this video, is things on the NetGalley Chef app, they definitely get archived and you can't access them after a certain point. And I just knew that Amazon was going to find a way to fuck this up. So I did want to be able to read it in a format that would actually be legible and would keep the intent of the poem formation intact. And sometimes they were like, okay, like there was a time where we were meeting Malcolm X and the X was made up of like smaller X's and a larger X. And I was just like, okay, like this is cute or, whatever. But is it really adding anything to the authorial intent? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I'm also the last person you need to come to for like poetry analysis. I haven't had to analyze a poem since I was in like AP 12, and I hated doing the poem analyzing in AP 12, so I'm going to hate it here. So again, not the person, but there were definitely times where the poems didn't really feel like poems and they just kind of felt like words that had been placed together in an artful way. There was also a time where we were just like counting the number of days. I think it was the time we were counting the Montgomery bus boycott. So it was just like 3 or 4 pages that was just like counting, and I was just like, okay, and I was like skipping through them. There are images included in the book, some that are familiar to me, some that might not be familiar to readers. There's no way for me to be like, you're gonna know all of these images, but I feel like they're pretty standard, pretty iconic images. The Edmund Pettus Bridge, lunch table, counter, protests. Protests where the people marching were being sprayed by the fire department. Like there were, I feel like, pretty like stock standard images for the civil rights era included in the book. But overall, I liked it. I do think that what Erica Martin was trying to do about bringing some well-known aspects of the civil rights era and some maybe not so much known aspect of the civil rights era, and there was definitely an intent of trying to I feel like some of the way that the poems are structured were including the reader in the experience, and so it was like you as the reader were living through the same time. It was, I don't know if that's quite what was going on, but in my sleep addled brain, that's what I was getting. That's what it was serving to me, and that's what I was getting out of it. So I do recommend this one to people. I do think that I had a really good time. I'm probably going to read it again before I'm done with this video because it was so quick to get through. Goodreads said this book is like over 100 pages, and maybe it is. I do know that at the end of the book there is a list of suggested readings. There's like a works cited thing because there are some quotes lifted from like famous speeches that were given during this time, from the Supreme Court decisions that were handed out during this time. So there's like a works cited thing there if you want to read those things, but there is like also like a list of suggested other readings for things. And I do like when books that are kind of nonfiction-y or that tackle like harder subjects, I guess, they leave a list of like things that you might want to read if you enjoyed this. So I do appreciate that. But if you wanted a little poetry collection, you wanted something, by the time this video goes up, Black History Month is going to be over. But if you want to continue on that Black history, or if you have a child in your life, I do think this was a nice little poetry collection that y'all could read together. Maybe read some of those supplemental texts together, have fun discussions, do that kind of a thing if you want to, get a little education-y vibe going on in your life. But that's really all I have to say about this poetry collection because, again, it wasn't very long and it didn't take me very long to get through. But I do recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars. It was a lovely addition to my Black History Month. It was a lovely addition to my reading year. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Past Monty, and they're going to talk about June's book. Okay, so it is currently Sunday, and this book is out fairly soon. I want to say it's a March 1st release. Are they going to tell me on the inside flap somewhere? It says March 2022. Does it say on the back? coming in March 2022. I want to say this is a March 1st release. All My Rage is the June prompt for All in the Title. So this book is pretty short. It is only, or at least the ARC version, 375-ish pages. It's currently, is there any embarrassing notification? Of course it was returned. I definitely thought, that's sad, but it is 7:44. I need to edit my House of Sky and Breath discussion so my patrons can get that. So that's going to be what I do while I make breakfast. But as soon as that's done, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to get to this. I'm going to read this. I know that this is set partially in the California desert, the high desert, I want to say, which is exciting because that's an area that I'm a little bit familiar with. And then I also believe that it takes place partially in Pakistan. So we'll see how it goes. So I have moved locations to the little meeting area at my apartment complex just for some visual dissimilarities. We might come back here again in another vlog, who knows? But I've read 70 pages of this so far, and now I know that we are following 3 timelines. So the 2 in the present are Sal, who is the son that is his parents own the motel in the middle of Juniper, California, out in the Mojave Desert. He's not doing so well. His father is an alcoholic and his mother dies in the first little bit that I was just reading. So hate to see that. Outside of that, we are following Noor, who is his ex-girlfriend, childhood friend situation. We know that their relationship hit a snag when they had a fight. We don't know anything about that fight, but we know that they had a relationship and they're no longer together. We're going to continue to follow the 2 of them as they process the death of Sal's mother, because we also know that Noor was from Pakistan and her house was leveled in an explosion, earthquake situationship. So all of her family, aside from her chachu, which I believe is her uncle on her father's side, if I'm remembering what the narrative told me, except for him. So he brought her to live with him, and he gave up his college ambitions of being an engineer, and so there's that storyline. And Noor was close to Sal's mother because she was also from Pakistan, and so she was the link to the culture. Sal's father is an alcoholic, and in the past timeline, we are following Sal's mother, Misbah, as she and Tariq are paired together in an arranged marriage situationship, and we are following them as right now they're still in Pakistan, but eventually obviously we're going to see them leave Pakistan, and we see that Tariq wasn't always an alcoholic, and something must have happened in the past to make him the alcoholic that we know today. So right now, the death of Misbah is looming large over the narrative, but because we are also getting her perspective in the past, I'm intrigued to see how that's going to play out and play into what's going to happen overall. I don't have much more to say other than that because I have only read 70 pages.
I am on page 207, I want to say, 206 of All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. I think that, let me set this down. If you read Permanent Record and you enjoyed it, I feel like that is a pretty close comparison. Now, the characters in this book are a lot younger than Pablo or his love interest were in that book. And this book is multiple perspective, and Permanent Record is a single perspective. But I think that if you liked that, or if you... I feel like Yoke is a little bit more hard-hitting with the medical issues, and there's clearly, medical diagnoses at play in this book. But I feel like the college aspect of Permanent Record the medical aspect of Yoke, and I guess even some of Emerging Contact with Sam's storyline a little bit is playing in here. So we have Noor, who is trying to get into college, who is like being rejected left, right, and center. Hate that for her. So that's kind of what she's dealing with at this present moment. Then you have Sal, who has turned to a life of crime to pay off the debts that the motel his mother was running has accrued over the years, and he's getting pretty close to paying it off. But it's like, damn, this man really had to become a drug dealer. I don't know if he needed to do that. I will say that it's not hitting the same way that Mary's books hit for me. Like for me, Mary gets real close to getting me to tears. Like we'd be right there on the verge. I'd be about to crack and be like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna need a moment. And I don't feel like Sapa Tahir is quite getting there. I feel a little bit like we're just like skimming the surface of all of these plot lines. Like we're skimming the surface of getting rejected from college. We're skimming the surface of how do we move on? How do we process the fact that, the mother is dead? I have to become a drug dealer. We're skimming the surface of him being a drug dealer. We're skimming the surface of some of the repercussions that he is having to deal with as a result of him turning to this life of crime. And I don't know, maybe in the final version, because this was an arc and it came to me, I want to say in like January. I forget when this got sent to me. So like maybe there have been a couple of, changes, and like maybe usually when I get like a physical thing, the physical thing that I get and what is shipped out is usually not one for one, but it's close. So I feel like I'm kind of chasing phantoms to believe that it's going to be that much different in the final version that gets shipped out next month. But I'm hoping that like maybe we're gonna dig in a little bit more deep in the last 100 or so pages, but we'll see. I mean, it's over 100 pages because it's 274 and I'm only on page 206. So 60 odd pages, 150 odd pages I have left. So we'll see if it gets to like that dig in point. It's about to be 4 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and run my errand at Target. I'm gonna pick up some Chipotle, eat my dinner. That's gonna be my evening plans, and I will come back later on tonight to give you my final thoughts. Right now, I'm kind of sitting at a 3-star range a little bit, I think. Maybe a 4. It really does depend on how this book is going to end for me to give my final thought.
So I'm here to give my final update on All My Rage by Sabati here. Ultimately, I wound up giving this 3 out of 5 stars, if I'm remembering correctly from my spreadsheet. And my real issue with the book is that while some of the issues I felt we got to dive in on, like how Sal's decision to be a drug dealer to try and save the motel, we got like a lot of that. We got a lot of the ramifications and what happened as a result of that action. We didn't get a lot of, I feel, that same level of care and attention in some of the other threads of the story. I really liked how we got to see that decision fracture even further, the fight that he and Noor had. But ultimately, there were some other elements of the story that were introduced that I was very confused as to why they were there. Like, the entire book, we know that we know that he is averse to touching, like physical contact, like he's not into that kind of a moment. It's kind of like repeatedly brought up. And we find out that he was molested as a child, and it's just kind of thrown in there. Like, he was just molested as a child as like a quirky, backgroundy moment. And his mother knows, and she's like, yeah, he doesn't need to know. And then like later on, after his mother has passed away, one of the doctors is like, yeah, your mom on her deathbed was like, maybe you should talk to my son about his unique medical history, because he was molested as a child in the laundry room at the motel. Like, it was just like, for what? Like, he he has very deep-seated, and it's not even just that like he doesn't want to talk about it, but because of the location, like every time he goes into the laundry room, he becomes physically ill. He cannot do laundry at all, um, because it makes him ill. So it's just like this is thrown into the narrative in a way that you don't want to dissect or address. And I understand that like life is messy, and so like making a book that is messy is sometimes necessary. But here it didn't feel necessary. It felt very much like a choice that was being made, and one that I didn't quite understand. Like I didn't understand what it was adding to the narrative. I didn't understand like what we were supposed to like take away from this choice to add it into the narrative. And it was a clear and conscious choice because at least my ARC version, and so I'm assuming the final version of these books do come with a content warning. I do think that Noor's storyline, both with uh Mispa and with Sal, like I feel like those were really strong connections, as well as her home life with how her uncle had come to resent her to the point where he was physically abusive, and like he was taking out his frustrations of like the life he was living was not the life that he thought he was going to be living, out on this child. And every time his niece was doing anything, it was I saved you. Anytime his niece wanted to assert some kind of like independence or be her own person, it was I pulled you from the wreckage of our home. I think earlier I said that it might have been bombed. It was definitely just an earthquake. It was definitely just an earthquake. And we did get to see some of Tafiq's struggle. I think I misnamed that man earlier. So Sal's father, Tafiq. We did get to see him continue to struggle with alcoholism. It wasn't this like hand wavy thing that just like went away. We did very much see that it was still a struggle. We also got to see Sal and Tafiq have to struggle to form a connection after Misbah had passed away. So overall, like I really do enjoy this. I do think that if you have enjoyed Mary H.K. Choi in the past, any one of her books, because I think that there are definitely elements of all three of her past books in this one. I think that you'll probably like it in some form or fashion. I do wish that I think that there were a lot, like there was an array of heavy topics that were in All My Rage, probably because the book is called All My Rage. But I do wish that like maybe I mean, again, I guess like the drug dealing was kind of the one that we focused on, and some of the domestic abuse. Like again, like I think that the storylines that centered Noor were better handled because Noor is involved in the drug dealing storyline. Eventually, she gets pulled into that whole situation. So I do think that her storylines and the things that affected her were better done than things that affected Sal. So that's where I ended up. Ultimately, like I said, 3 out of 5 stars. I did have a good time. I do recommend it. If it was something that you were looking forward to reading this year, I do think this is a good book. As for my introduction to Saba Tahir, it was fine. Like I said, I did enjoy it. I would read more contemporary from her. It's not making me want to rush out and read the Ember Quartet, but for this book, I'm happy to have read it, and I don't regret requesting. But I'm gonna send it back to future Monty to discuss the next book that we have to read for this video. What is up, you guys? So I'm here today to update you guys on this month's prompt. I think was like bookish words, like books or words relating to books, like pages, whatever. So I decided to read, as a little intro thing told you, Sunny G's series of rash decisions, because series can be related to books. It's a bookish word, right? This book is horrible. Horrible does feel a little bit like an exaggeration, so, hyperbole intended. I am not having a good time. Not liking it, I'm not invested, and I don't like what's happening. I'm only 28% of the way through this book, according to the audio. According to the e-arc that I have, I'm 29% of the way through, so roughly a third. The book starts off with Sunny at prom, and we feel that he feels out of place. He's a Sikh, and he's decided to shave his beard. He does not seem to be wearing a turban, and we get some kind of like history and things of that nature. We learn that his brother was a gay man who was an alcoholic, and he died. We then later on get a scene where Sunny describes finding his brother's dead body. Not sure I needed that. Not sure that was something I needed. I also don't really know that I needed to know that his dead brother was gay, or that he was using his dead brother's death as like motivation to live his own life to the fullest, or that he was using his dead brother's journal and like his dead brother's list of things that he wanted to do as motivation to like live his own life to the fullest. And then we got a scene after that where the love interest of this book vandalized his list that he was writing in his dead brother's journal, which she was being like cute and quirky and was supposed to be presented as being cute and quirky. But it's like, it's already weird enough that you're using your dead brother's journal as like motivations to better yourself. But now it's like even weirder that she's being there to like offer commentary on it and to continue to push you when it's like, that's fine and all, but this is still like your dead brother's property that you've just, it's weird. It's odd. Hate that for the culture, hate that for me specifically. And so that's kind of where it's really throwing me off. The also, like, everybody in this book seems to be cosplaying, which doesn't make any sense to me because like I said, the book starts off at prom, and like there's a table that he is sitting at where people are there and he's not friends with any of them, but that's the table he's sitting at, and they're all there as like Batman characters and villains. And then it's revealed that this love interest is at prom dressed as like Katara. And then there's like this like cosplay convention for this Harry Potter knockoff in world situation. I call it a knockoff, but like I think it's a knockoff just in the sense that it has like the same impact and following that Harry Potter has in our world, but it's like this made up situation that's very different. And well, it seems like a magic school, but there's like maybe more Lord of the Rings aspects as well. It's like, generic fantasy fandom situations, right? It's just it's a lot, and none of it seems to be very good. And at the whole, I think the part that's really throwing it off for me is that the dead brother is there to not only be a motivation for Sunny, but as also is like the vehicle in which the author is giving us a glimpse into Sunny's culture, because on the same day as prom is like this remembrance, that's the 1 year anniversary. Oh, yeah, like the 1 year anniversary of this man taking. It feels weird to say he took his own life because he was an alcoholic and he died of alcohol poisoning after drinking 3 bottles of whiskey. But I don't think he set out to commit suicide, but it just kind of like a byproduct of that decision. It's weird, right? Like, this book is wild. So if you are going to be triggered by like death of a loved one or alcoholism in general, probably wouldn't pick this up. So it's weird that it's like this look into the culture via this man's death, but also like, hey, little brother, go live your life to the fullest. You don't have any. It's just a lot, and I don't think either of them. I mean, I like the culture act. I'm not gonna be like, oh, the culture is it's not being handled well. The fuck do I know about Sikh culture? Nothing. Um, but it's just, it feels like an odd narrative decision. It just feels weird. It don't give me the good vibes. So that's weird. The love interest angle is weird. I don't understand where this story is going, because I'm certainly not rooting for this romance. I'm hardly rooting for Sunny. He's just a character that I'm following. So it's not a win for me, but I'm gonna see where this goes, and I'll check back in at the end of this process to let you guys know. Y'all, let me take out this headphone. I finished the book. I finished the book last night. I was on the stream. We read the book. I talked about the book with the reading sprint people. And ultimately, at no point did I find this book enjoyable. I don't know the headspace that past Monty was in when he was like, yes, Penguin. I think this was from Penguin. When I was filling out the form and I was looking at the titles and I was like, yes, I want to read this. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what the blurb says, because somewhere in this mess of a book that's only 304 pages, that's another issue I have. This book is 304 pages. It is not nearly long enough to do all of the things that it wanted to do. In that, it simultaneously wanted to be a book about grief, about Sunny, processing the death of his older brother, but also this relationship that he was having with Mindy. I think in my last update, or it might have been during the sprints, I was calling the person who died there for Mindy. her aunt, it was her grandmother. I thought it was her grandmother, and then I was like, maybe it wasn't actually her grandma, maybe it was just an aunt. No, Mindy's grandmother died. So like both of these people are like processing these people that have died in their lives, but are also coming together. And then the series of events that went on, I just didn't find any of them to really be all that rash. Like, I don't know why we're calling them rash decisions. I thought that it was weird that the book starts off with Sonny writing down this list that's two items, and both items in his little notebook are ticked off at the very beginning of the book. Like, before you even know what is on the list, he has already accomplished both items. And I don't think by the end of the book he has made any other rash decisions. And I don't think he's really come anywhere close to sort of discovering like who he is or feeling more comfortable in himself, because in addition to this storyline where he is falling for this girl, and the storyline where he's trying to, you know, connect with his brother and like process that, he is also trying to understand like what it means for him to be a Sikh, and what he, like, his relationship to his Sikh community, because he has recently shaved his beard and he's not wearing the turban. So like there's a whole lot of like just personal identity that is happening, and a lot of him trying to find himself and push himself to discover these things are because he is motivated by the death of his brother, who was his dead gay brother, which I do think is important to the story. And then I also think, spoiler alert, that when the dead gay brother came back as a hallucination at the end of the book, y'all know I don't fuck with that shit. I didn't fuck with it when I was reading, what was that goddamn awful book? The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I didn't fuck with it when there was an emotional support Negro who came back as a hallucination. And I don't support the dead gay brother coming back as a hallucination. It wasn't really a hallucination in this one so much as it was like a dream sequence where the dead gay brother was telling Sonny everything he needed to know, and was just like really there to be a yes man, like, because it was very clear that this, like, the person is dead, and not only is the person dead, we don't ever know this person. And so it's just, it comes off as like this just like really self-centered way of like, yeah, my brother came back and he gave me the, you know, the pep talk that I needed to hear, and he was telling me everything that I needed to know so I could feel good about myself. And it's like, that very well could have happened when the brother was alive, but the reader has no way of knowing that. And so to me, just it came off as like self-centered or selfish, and that's a little extreme to call it that, but that's how it felt. It didn't feel like this was something that this dead person was really going to say, because we don't know this person. So it was just weird. It came out of nowhere. It just didn't work. I also did not go into this book expecting it to be a time crunch novel, and it was. And I'm discovering that I really hate those. I really hate when the I don't I said this when I was reading it in the reading sprints, and I've come to the conclusion that a lot of time crunch novels, although I say this, but I read My Wife is Missing for this video, and that book was fine. Like, it was a good time. But here I find, especially like YA contemporaries that don't really have like a thriller element. I mean, in thriller, I think it's different. And I think that we also, when I was talking about this in the reading sprint, we went off on this tangent about how technically a lot of the Taylor Jenkins Reid's books are time crunch novels, in that they are set in a pretty short window of time, but you get flashbacks, and so it feels like everything is happening, you know, for forever, like you're going through all these years. But the flashbacks are just part of the framing device where the interview is happening, and the interview's over like a week or so, you know what I mean? So there are definitely ways to do a time crunch, like in a thriller, or you're like, you know, you're racing against the clock and the stakes are high, or you're using the time crunch element of like the week to tell a life story, you know what I mean? So like you can get around a time crunch and have it work out fine, but that's not what this book does. The book starts at prom, and it's the evening time, and the book goes until like 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit later than 4 o'clock in the morning. And like that's the entire, like everything that happens in that little window. There's no, we're gonna go back and look at this. And so it didn't work. I didn't like the prom sequence where people were, this is another thing I didn't like. I really, I mean, how do I phrase this? I appreciated that our main character, Sunny, was really into cosplay, and he had like this really intense fandom with this fictionalized fantasy world. He was in like a band for this fictional fantasy world that he was a fan of with his friends. Like, I really appreciated that aspect of the story. but there was like literally no point in time in the entirety of this 24-hour period that we were living in where people weren't dressed up as fantasy characters. And I did find that to be a little bit outrageous. Like, not only were like people were at prom dressed as Poison Ivy and the fucking Penguin and some other characters. Then the girl he's falling for is at prom in a Katara cosplay. He then goes home where his family is doing like a secret remembrance for his dead brother, so he can put on his fantasy cosplay for this fictional character David or Defeed. Then he crashes his best friend Ngozi's Nigerian Ghanaian family get together, celebrating. I think it was like her sister, her cousin, getting engaged, where Ngozi is in cosplay at this family function, which I thought was weird. Between the going back to get the defeat and cosplay and leaving the prom, there was like a moment at a Denny's where everybody in the Denny's that in his little friend group was also in a cosplay, and it was like, this is weird. Y'all are weird. Like, you're just sitting in a fucking Denny's. Um, then at some point they go to a donut shop and two girls walk in costumes. They go to a South Asian poetry club reading where everyone is in South Asian cosplay, like anime cosplay about South Asian characters. Like, then they crash a D&D campaign at midnight in the bottom of, and no, it's not even midnight, it's like 2 o'clock in the fucking morning in the basement of a library, and everybody in the library is in fucking Star Wars cosplay. And then after that, that's when we get the weird hallucination of the dead gay brother. So it was just like the only people in this book who were never in cosplay was like a one-off side character or the parents of Ngozi at the family function. Like, none of her family was in cosplay, and then Sunny's parents. So like literally everybody else in this book is in cosplay, and it just felt like it felt a little ridiculous that literally every character in the book was wearing a cosplay on this day. That just it's like that seems. I understand that cosplay is big, that there are a lot of people who love to like dress up and like go to conventions and do the thing and like just live their life, you know, and more power to them. They're creative individuals, could never be me. Y'all, like, again, like I recognize the talent and this, like I understand like the hobby nature of it. But for this book, it just took me out of it. It just felt a little ridiculous. Everybody in the city of Fresno in this 24-hour period was wearing cosplay. I also didn't really buy the relationship that was forming between Sunny and his love interest Mandy. These are characters who are in their senior year of high school. The school year is damn near over if they're at prom, especially in California. Prom in California, you have like a month maybe before you leave for like and go live your life or whatever. Then we find out that Sunny is going to stay in Fresno and she's going to go to Paris literally in the next few months. So it's like these two characters who have never talked in their entire, it wasn't even like, oh, we used to be friends, which again was also weird because at prom, Mandy steals this alleged notebook that's supposed to be like super important to Sunny. That's part of the hallucination at the end of the book because he realizes like maybe he can just like lose the notebook and everything is gonna be okay, which again is weird because it's like that was the last thing you had of your brother as we were trying to find his thoughts. But then he wasn't even reading his brother's notebook, he was using the notebook for his own personal use. So it was like you really could have just been using any notebook if you're just going to use it as a notebook and you weren't even like reading your brother's final thoughts. But that's another point entirely. Mandy steals this notebook at the prom, right? And that's how they end up in this wacky little adventure going on a town about together because she really likes Sunny and she thought that stealing his possession would be like a cute quirky way of getting to spend a day together. And like she was right, she got to spend this day together. But it's like, y'all, this it just didn't feel it. The relationship went from, it was weird because Mandy stole the notebook and then went back to Sunny's friend group. So it's like Mandy was friends with the friend group, but y'all two weren't really close like that. You just kind of like recognized her from going to school together, but y'all aren't actually close. So again, when she leaves in 2 months, why would I believe that y'all would keep this up when y'all have never really communicated outside of this 24-hour period? Like, that's the thing. That's the thing for me. It didn't work. But at the same time, I feel like if you were going to tackle themes of like grief and loss and moving on and like what does being me really mean, I think we could have handled those better. And I think that we should have taken the time to write a longer book. But it felt incomplete in all of these different narratives. And I felt that the last part of the book was really trying to like tie up a lot of loose strings. I think if we had just removed the entire section where he was hallucinating his dead brother in the back of the ice cream truck, like he had this like little dream or whatever, and just used that to wrap up his romantic storyline, I would have been okay with it. Because the ending of the book has like a couple of false ends. Because the entire book we're leading up to this, it's like I think is the name of the character in the book is like Jamie Snoller something. I don't know. It's like it's not Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, but it's kind of like that kind of aesthetic, right? It's like it's that big to these fictional characters. That's the inspiration for his little fantasy band or whatever. So the first part of the book, we're leading up to this event. Only when we get to this event, the book continues on, and then we get the weird Star Wars in the basement of the library or in the back of the library, somewhere around a library. And it just continues on for what feels like too long. So I would have just ended the story when he got to the festival that he was trying. Well, not was on. It was like a concert he was supposed to play. Right. I would have ended it at the concert. We could have ended it with this note of these characters, Mandy and Sunny kissing and like having a fun time at the concert after his little gig, and like he's sweaty or whatever, and he's just like, "Whoa, I'm having fun" or whatever. We could have ended it there, and all of this trying to tie up the storyline with his brother, I would have just left it. And so I can't really recommend it. I can't. I don't know who would get enjoyment. Firstly, but secondly, I don't think that you need to. I don't know. Like if it was already on your radar, go for it. And like there were some actually like good moments in the book. Like the book isn't just like horrible. It's not like it's terrible. I just personally did not get enjoyment from it. So like technically, sentence structure wise, like the prose or whatever, everything is fine. It's perfectly fine. It's not like the worst book ever written and you need to like call your hungers person and campaign to ban. It's not, it's not that. It's not like offensive, except, again, the little dead gay brother part that was teetering for me. I'm still going back and forth on it. But overall, it's not, like it's not that level of horrendous. It just didn't, strike my personal fancy. So that's ultimately where I ended up. Hopefully some of that made sense. And I'm gonna end it there. So if I had to give it a rating, 2 stars, you know, maybe like technically like a 1.5 maybe, but I would feel okay rounding it up to a 2 star on Goodreads. Sometimes I wouldn't, but in this case, I think I will. It didn't work for me, and if you've read it, hopefully it worked for you. But I'm gonna go ahead and pass this off to Past Monty, and he's gonna talk about a book. I don't remember what book I read after this, what month is supposed to be coming after, but maybe he enjoyed that more. Maybe he didn't. You'll know because you're gonna watch it, but I can't remember.
We're just going to pretend. We're going to pretend that this is somehow a flattering image that you're looking at. But I'm 43% of the way through Slingshot by Mercedes Helwin, I want to say. Hopefully that's correct. This is an arc that I have been sitting on for a hot minute. And when I requested it, I thought that I was going to read it and enjoy it. And then I said, I don't know. And y'all, this book is good. This book is good. Now, here we are following like this low rent, rinky dink, raggedy boarding school who is like, they're trying to compete with, the girlies in boarding school, but they're like, again, like the low rent, raggedy version. So automatically I love it. Our main character, this seemed to be a problem for some people on Goodreads. The book opens with our protagonist who is younger. She's like 14, 15, like maybe edging into 16, somewhere in there. But she's a sophomore in high school, so that age range. And she is lamenting over the fact that she has had a crush on this teacher. She thought this teacher was her soulmate. She was down bad for the man. And people were like really in their feelings about this not being like a good thing to have in a YA novel. Now, I don't recall being down bad for any of my high school teachers. Don't recall it. Do I think that it's out of the realm of possibility? No, I don't, because it's not as though this man actually engages in a relationship with this character. Like the man is like, what, this is weird. It's very, take a step back, no. Like there's a boundary here. So I don't understand like why this is an issue for people. I don't get it, especially in the way that it was presented. It's very I think it's innocent. It was a very innocent crush that she had. It was a very high school level crush that she had. It wasn't like on the new Gossip Girl where we had to watch like Max Wolf stalk the teacher man, and then the teacher man like was weird, and like it was weird. Like that, we can talk about that. But here, what Mercedes Helwin actually wrote was not bad. So we have her, she was getting over the crush that she had on the teacher man. And then there's a new boy in school who's getting bullied, and so our protagonist shoots the bully with her slingshot, hence the name of the book, I guess. And then they start a form of friendship that's like reluctant, so it's like reluctant friends, and I think it's going to become reluctant friends to lovers. But there's this messy drama that I'm currently in the middle of at 43%, where our protagonist had like just lost her virginity to the bully that was chasing down her new friend, and so she's like feeling all kinds of conflicted there. I'm eating it up, but it's just, I don't know, like it feels a little messy for a 15-year-old, and that was another thing that people on Goodreads were saying. But like, just because, listen, I was a very in my house child, right? Like I was not in these streets going to these parties, getting drunk, hooking up in high school, but I am under zero impression that those children exist. Like those children who are having sex, who are smoking cigarettes, they exist. 15-year-olds doing that shit exists. There are children today who have bodies, who have murdered people, who have murdered their friends, right? Like this idea that 15-year-old, like no 15-year-old is gonna like talk to a senior, and the senior at the high school is gonna give him a cigarette. It's like, it's not an actual, like these aren't, like everyone here is still a child. Like these are children talking to children hooking up with, like, why are we upset? Like what are we actually mad about talking about? The book Sorry, did you say that? Siri interrupting me. But it's like, what are we mad about? Like, what are we actually being upset about? Because to me, like, this is children doing childish things. It's children doing what children should be doing, and in a mostly safe environment. Because again, like these are with people who are her own age. She loses her virginity to someone who is her own age. Her new reluctant friend man is her own age. The little senior girl giving her advice is like, sure, older than her, but it's not like she's talking to like some random college student who is giving her advice. Like these are all people in a very similar age range interacting with one another that I think is very believable. And so to me, it feels a little out of touch. It, like, people want to talk about, oh, it's like a 40-year-old woman writing a teenager. Y'all sound like you are 40-year-olds. Y'all sound and I'm sure the people who are actually writing these reviews are younger than I am. I feel like the people who are saying this in their things might be a little bit closer to our protagonist's age. That's like, just because your experience was not this thing in high school, and just because you didn't know these people, does not mean that these people don't exist. These people exist. Like children, teenagers like this girl exist, who is just like unlikable. And I don't know about y'all, but I know many a teenager that are not likable, especially at 15. Hate to break it to you, but 14 and 15-year-olds, they're the most unlikable humans on the planet, and that's okay. You know why? Because they're children. Her narration in her head does not feel stilted. Like, I'm at a loss. I'm clearly not reading the same book that everyone else is reading. Now, is Slingshot a new favorite? 5 out of 5 stars? No, it's not. It is a solid 3.5, maybe even a 4-star. But I think that part of me is enjoying it more because I feel like y'all, like, people are in the streets hating for what? Like, when there are genuinely bad books that I see every day get talked about as though it's the second coming of Jesus Christ himself, like the holy anointed son of God just touched the pages. If I had to sit here and watch people give House of Sky and Breath 5 out of 5 stars, if I had to sit here and watch people give Razor Blade Tears 5 out of 5 stars, If I have to sit here and watch people give The Secret History 5 out of 5 stars, if I have to sit here and watch people give Seven Husbands 5 out of 5 stars, Docile 5 out of 5 stars, like, there are actually bad books that exist in the world that are actually damaging to people, that are actually like not pushed back against in the bookish community the way that things should actually get pushed back again. But when children are actually behaving like children, it becomes like, that's when it's weird to me. Like, these children are doing what children should do, and that's when we have an issue. Like, the sex is off page. It's not even like we're getting full blown these kids are fucking. It's like, yeah, I lost my virginity and it was kind of awkward. So 43%, I'm having a good time. It's not going to be a new favorite. It's not, revolutionary, but I am having a good time. If you want to read about messy kids having messy kids activities at a low rent raggedy boarding school set in Florida with there's also like a side plot where she's trying to like maybe reconnect with her dad. She's having some kind of like issues there, and her mother's like apparently delusional a little bit. Like, there is some family stuff which I appreciate. I appreciate it anytime I get family in YA. Anytime, especially in contemporary, because in contemporary, I find that there is really no excuse to sideline the family. I feel like the family characters, especially in contemporary, can add a lot to whatever is going on in there. Like, every contemporary does not need to be a romantic situation, so we can include the parents. Even if there is a romantic subplot, and even if there is a romantic subplot, we can still bring the parents in, right? Like, we can still bring them in, just to be there. But because I have been in this car so long that the fucking lights went out, I'm gonna actually go. I will check back in once I have finished the book with good lighting, probably with my good camera, to wrap it up. But so far, I feel like haters are hating, and I don't get it.
Good morning, you guys. So, I'm going to put on some lotion and I'm going to talk about my final thoughts on Slingshot, because that's what I was reading in this portion of the vloggy vlog. I'm trying to get away from the microphone because I don't think anybody wants lotion ASMR. But overall, I wound up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. Now, I do think that this book, did I read this? Yes, I have already read this. I do think that Slingshot and All My Rage by Sabati here fall into similar kind of issues where they are just straight contemporary. So they're, I do think that Slingshot leans more into like a romance arc than All My Rage did, but they both bring up like these really heavy topics. And in Slingshot, it becomes a story about kind of like, well, the underlining tones of like neglect are always there in sort of Gracie's storyline and her having to like deal with a parent who is suffering from delusions of grandeur and like an absentee father who she feels like abandoned her. Like, those are kind of always in the undercurrent of her plot line until we get to this romance arc that she has with Wade. But at the end of the book, it becomes a story of like parental abuse on Wade's part, and we see abuse play out, and it's weird. It's very weird, and I don't think that All My Rage or Slingshot really gave any of these heavier things the weight that they deserved, the time to explore them that they deserved. Just my personal opinion. But I think that what Slingshot did well is it gave a lot of everything else. Why is my hair look so sad? I don't think this is really helping, but we're just gonna... Oh, God. It looks a little less sad. Anyway, I think that what Slingshot does well is it gives you mess in other areas. So we do get this really heavy subplot with Gracie and her roommate, with Grace and Wade, with Grace and Derek, with Grace and Bella. Like, there's all of these other storylines that I think prop up and give you this messy insight into the teenage life, whereas All My Rage quickly delves into like, I don't know, like, I think that it really wanted to be a hard-hitting contemporary that dealt with all of these hard issues, And so everything else is kind of existed in these characters' lives. And so for me, like that story just, it was good, it was solid. I could recommend you to read it. But it doesn't motivate me to read other things by Sabaa Tahir. Particularly, it doesn't really motivate me to read other contemporaries, even though I do think that it pulls elements from some of my favorites, like from Mary H.K. Choi. I think that even though it echoes a lot of the things that I love about Mary's books, it didn't deliver a lot else. And here I think that this book had like the same issues, but it was just more entertaining. Like I sped through this book in 2 sessions, both at work. And to me, that's almost, it's becoming the sign of a good book, because as easy as it is to listen to audiobooks while I have like the last hour or so of my day left at work, the science is quickly becoming, if it's not a good audiobook, I don't want to listen to it. If I'm not having a good time, I don't want to listen to it. Because it's like such an easy time to squeeze in some listening, that actively choosing not to is subtly and slowly becoming the sign that I'm not actually vibing with a book. And I was really much vibing with this one. So even though I picked it up like 2 days a week apart for various reasons, mostly related to trying to finish other things for other projects and kind of failing, um, I did overall have a really good time. I did have a 4-star worthy time. Now, whereas I had a 3-star time with All My Rage, I still think that I could recommend All My Rage to a lot of different people, and a lot of different people could get something out of it. With Slingshot, I don't think that I could recommend this to somebody who did not want a boarding school book that was kind of messy, but wasn't so much like the glitz and glamour of boarding school, and it wasn't so much like I mean, there is somewhat of a fish out of water element, because Gracie is a poorer kid at this school, but the school itself is like also not an elite institution. It is kind of like, it's fancy-ish, it attempts to be the creme de la creme, but it's very much not the creme de la creme. It is kind of like this boarding school that fits in like this sort of you know so it also doesn't give, I think, what a lot of people want for a boarding school book. So I do think that it's a very niche audience, and you do have to be willing to read from the mind of a 15-year-old who is kind of, I said this in my little like car rant that was like half in the dark. It was not very flattering. Thank you for sticking through that. But I do think that these did ultimately feel like 15-year-olds. Like, they did feel like kids that could exist. And I think that, especially because this is a contemporary and not a romance, that the ending of this book I felt earned, and it felt real. It felt very genuine, even without all of the parental abuse aspects of the last part of the book. Because for the last part of the book, I was like, what is going on here? And it did kind of ultimately feel like a plot device. Um, but with how it wrapped up, with how it ended, it did feel real, and I felt that it could exist in a reality that like the characters themselves could exist in. And so again, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I had a really good time. Thank you to Wednesday Books for giving me an arc of this almost like 2 years ago at this point. But I finally read it and I did have a good time. But I do think that the audience for this one is a little bit narrower, and I would have a harder time pinpointing who exactly I think this book is for. I got you. So, this is one of the rare instances where I'm reading the things that I'm supposed to be reading in order for this project, because I have been kind of bouncing around and reading the books that I've been getting from Libby, or squeezing in like All My Rage I read physically when I could squeeze in a physical read. So, I'm reading this in order. This is for the month of January, February, March, April, May, September. Is that right? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, September. This is September. This is probably, there are a couple of books. I think there's like 3 books on here that I mentioned in my intro, maybe, unless I edited it out. I haven't started editing this video. So, like, what you've seen, what you haven't seen, who the fuck knows? But this book specifically is probably the biggest stretch, because Buzzwordathon is supposed to be about the title. And as you will know, um, I'm using all of my NetGalley arcs for this, and I made this TBR in like January. And while I have gotten a couple of other arcs since January, I don't think I've gotten one that would fit this prompt better. And I've already started listening to this audiobook, so I'm not going to change it. But the prompt for this month was light and dark. And I'm reading The Starless Crown because, in my mind, what is starless but dark? You know, there's no stars in the night sky. It's pretty dark, pretty dark. Kayla told y'all to take the challenge and interpret it, and she was not here to field questions about does it count. And so, because she's not fielding questions and I don't feel the need to go bother her, I, I said it counts. So, if you are upset with that, argue with your mama because I'm not going to be addressing how I chose to interpret this prompt. So, The Starless Crown is a adult high science fantasy as described by the author James Rollins. James Rollins has written numerous fantasy books under a different pen name. He told me in the introduction to this book, but I can't be bothered. But he has also written a bunch of like sci-fi and like thrillers and like maybe sci-fi thrillers or maybe it's just thrillers. But he likes science fiction. I don't know. The man's written books. Okay, this is not a debut. It's on his first trip to the rodeo. He's been around the block a couple of times for several decades at this point. I want to say he's been writing books for like 20 years, but don't hold me to that because I did absolutely no research. The Starless Crown is not actually a book that was on my radar until Tor reached out to me. And when Tor reached out to me, I was not gonna lie, I was a little surprised because while I have read a couple of books from Tor in the past, most of the time those reviews end with me dragging the book. Me being in Tor's defense, a lot of the time, it is actually Tor.com and not Tor itself, so they are separate. They are a little different. But Tor reached out and they said, "Would you like to read The Starless Crown?" And I said, "You know, I've been dragging your books. You guys are reaching out to me. You guys never reach out to me. I will read this book." And then I promptly decided to not pick it up until 2 months after the book came out. But again, we are reading it. We are here. We are doing what they asked me to do. And they're getting a video. So, like, how upset can Tor really be? I hope you're enjoying the video because I have read the first 20 or so percent of The Starless Crown, and I'm having a really good time. So far, we've been introduced to three perspectives. We have Nyx, who is like a young adult character. They're in their teenage years. I think we got an age, but is gone over my head. I just know that they are currently in school. They are like the creme de la creme at this elite institution. We also know that they had an issue with blindness. Some Here's the thing: they were definitely introduced as a blind character, and at the point where I'm at now, they have definitely lost their blindness. Like they can definitely see, and I am reading this as like a person who had like cataracts, because cataracts, as far as I understand it, are reversible. Um, I don't know the differences between cataracts and true blindness. I myself am not a blind person, so like where this falls into like the representation category is not. It is what it is. You can read it as a character who had a disability that was magically cured. You can read it. I'm choosing to read it as cataracts because the man has described his book as science fantasy. And as far as I know, at cataracts, you can get a surgery, you can do it. And in this world, this happened to be a little magical surgery. I don't know. We have her, like I said, she's like the creme de la creme. She was found floating in the bog, and she eventually got adopted by this little like farm man person. He's not really a farmer. I think he does like trading or something. Um, so he found her, he saved her. She got to go to this elite boarding institution. Then we were following a character by the name of Wraith, I want to say. I think it might have just been Raph, but the speed I'm listening to, it sounded like Wraith. And he was imprisoned in the mines because fantasy loves themselves a fucking mind slave. Love that for the culture. So he was imprisoned in the mine, and he stumbled across like this golden egg as he was trying to escape. And there was a statue inside the egg, and there was a series of events that were kind of like unfortunate. And the statue inside the egg definitely came to life. A character died, and now he is on the run with the statue. So there's some kind of buffoonery happening there. And then we just met the twin brother to the prince. So he is also a prince, but he is like not in line to like the throne because he's the second born. Um, and we know that he is suffering from a bout of drunkenness, and he was about to be kidnapped, but he fought his way out. And I believe he is also at the same institution that our homegirl Nyx is at, so I think that those two paths are about to cross. The Starless Crown is set in a world where the Earth is still rotating, but it is stuck. So, like, half of the Earth faces the sun at all times, and the other half of the Earth is like it don't face the sun. And so there are these 2 points on this planet where it's habitable, it sounds like, because we definitely know there's like a southern people who are darker. And we have like the people we have, I guess, we're in the north. And some that are lighter, but they're in the north. And so there's something happening here. According to the prologue, we definitely know that one of these characters is supposed to bring about the end of the world, which, I hate to break it to y'all, but it sounds like your world already ended. Uh, this is also the first in a series, which I don't know if I'm enjoying it enough to continue on. I'm having a good time with this particular book, but it sounds like I don't know. I kind of just want the world to end in this book, but we'll see how it goes because, like I said, I am having a really good time. I am liking the narrator of this specifically because I am listening to an audiobook from my library. Shout out to the library. But yeah, I'm having a really good time so far. So far, I would recommend it to you. I don't think that it's doing anything revolutionary in terms of fantasy. I don't think it was necessary for me to get like it was a pretty lengthy couple pages maybe, a description of how this world functions when we were meeting Nyx and like she was in her class or whatever. I don't know if I needed like the scientific like explanations or whatever, but I did expect it because there was an introduction that was read by the author that was gonna let me know that this is like science fantasy, and so he's gonna try and incorporate some like scientific things into it. So I'm expecting that going forward. It's not detracting from anything, but just personally, I don't know. Like to me, I'm okay with fantasy literally just being fantasy, and I do think that especially and like I think that what marks the end of like old school fantasy and like new school fantasy is like this need to have like these really rigid magic systems that have tons of explanation and tons of theorizing and like physicists coming to explain to me how this could like really work. And it's just like that's really cool. I love that for y'all. Like I'm really happy that you guys can do that. But to me, it's really okay if you just be like fantasy fantasy. And I say that because I think that I read so little of it that's just fantasy. I feel like a lot of the fantasy I read is not very hand wavy. It is a lot of like description. And so maybe if I read some hand wavy fantasy, I'd be like, bitch, what do you mean? You know? But I don't know. But because I am expecting that, I'm not too torn up about it at the current moment. So as it stands, I'm having a good time. I'll check back in once I've read some more. What's up, you guys? There's currently some like birds being birds outside. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear that, but it's a thing that is occurring. I finished The Starless Crown a couple of days ago. I need to scoot back, or if I. That's opposite. Because I want to be able to rest my hand without it looking like this is. There we go. Hopefully, editing Monty took some of that out. He probably didn't. It depends on how long this video is at this point. But I finished the Starless Crown a couple of days ago, and I initially didn't know what to think of it. So I don't know how much of the information I gave you in that first intro clip is correct information. I mean, I know that Nyx's name is Nyx, but all the other character names have definitely muddled around in my brain, and when they were using them in the book, I definitely knew who we were talking about. But I think that because I got into the flow of the audio at such a fast speed, I don't trust myself with like the actual pronunciations of these people and their names. But I do know their place and role in the story, and ultimately I was entertained. And I don't know if that was strictly an audio decision because I did like the narrator of this book quite a lot. I thought that she did a lot to elevate the text, um, and how much of it was the book, because I don't think I ever actually opened the e file that NetGalley sent me after being contacted by Tor to read this book. So I can't compare if I would have been as engrossed. There was a stretch in the middle of the book where the characters they're going on a quest essentially, because as I said in in the little intro clip I did for this, we were following Nyx. She was a girl who had been previously blind, was currently in the process of being able to see after being attacked, and there was like a big hullabaloo. There was a prologue that said that this girl was going to destroy the world, and so in the middle of the book, we are going on this quest where Nyx and the prince that I talked about in my intro clip were trying to escape from being captured by the prince's father's army, because they wanted the bats and they wanted to like try and use the bat poison to enhance their weaponry. But also this girl might be part of another prophecy, not just that she's going to destroy the world situation. And so they're going on this little questy quest to get to this placey place. And in there, that's kind of where the story started to fall apart a little bit for me, because we had that going on, and then we had the little mind slave man who had like freed himself, and there was like the golden statue person who was like a living god or like a vessel for a god. And there was a lot in the middle of the book where characters were finding out things that we knew already and things that we had known since the prologue, and it didn't feel satisfying. It felt like, oh, yeah, but we knew that already. Like the way that the information was given to me just like so willy-nilly, and the way that these characters kept having to stumble across it, and because we were following these two groups of people, we oftentimes had to find the same information in both perspectives, like from both sides of the situation, and it just wasn't entertaining in a way that I enjoyed. There was also a very extended sequence on this questy quest where the Nyx party was having to dodge like these insect like creatures that I did not want to read about. They would like burrow into you and like lay it was a lot of that, a lot of burrowing into you, a lot of laying eggs, a lot of like ripping you apart from the inside, a lot of like giant arachnid like things. um there's that. I also do think that I know that in my intro clip I talked about how there's fantasy that's just kind of like hand wavy, it's magic, and I said that I would like it. And then this book, there was an element of this book that was kind of like hand wavy, it's magic, and I was just like, I like it because I said that I wanted hand wavy magic, but I also was just like, but it wasn't fun hand wavy magic. It was just like this thing that existed that we could do suddenly, but it wasn't explained. I don't know. It was it and it kind of it just sort of straddled this line where James Rollins wanted to explain this little like heart song situation, but also like didn't want to explain this thing, and so we would kind of get explanations for it, but at the same time there'd be like, oh well, it's been corrupted, and it's like now it's something different, and at the end of the day it was magic, but it was just whatever. There was also a third act resurrection reincarnation situation that has really been what's throwing me. So, over the course of the novel, we find out the origins of Nyx, how she had come into this world, the situations of her childhood before she was found by the swamp man and raised by him and his little. Um, he already had two sons, but his wife had died, and so he takes in the little swamp girl Nyx, and so we find out where she was raised, and that does come into play with like the little hand wavy magic situation, and events that happened as part of that storyline about where she had come from. I don't really understand how it's supposed to make sense. Some of the memories that she seems to recover over the course of the novel just didn't make sense. And we also discover the actual plot of the series, which is to get the Earth to start spinning again. So at some point in this world's history, the Earth stops spinning, and so that's how we have these, like, there's like a habitable halo that encircles the Earth, because one side is stuck facing the sun and the other side is permanently away from the sun. So it's just like how the same side of the moon orbits the Earth, but it's just the same side of the Earth is orbiting the sun. But there is a moon, and that moon is definitely going to crash into this Earth, which is interesting because our moon is slowly cycling away from our planet, and they're just slowly circling toward the planet. And we definitely are trying to avoid this. And they seem to think that if they can get the Earth to orbit again, to like start rotating, that I guess it'll push the moon away. That part of the book is not actually explained. It's not really explained to me how the Earth spinning is going to stop the moon from crashing into the Earth. We just know that it will, which is weird because we do get so many other scientific explanations. Like the book opens with James Rollins saying this is science fantasy, and maybe it just went over my head. Maybe there was an explanation given that I just didn't comprehend, but we really just got we need the Earth to spin again, or the Earth is going to crash into the planet. And there was also a point in the book where so we were following these two separate groups. Right? We had Nyx, who was this little girl who was supposed to bring about the end of the world, and then we had the bronze statue lady who was awoken in this mine, and it's very clear that she's like a god, kind of. And then we ultimately find out that she's not. There's more like her that were created by somebody else or some other like higher people, to help in the not dying world situation. Um, and so there was a point in the book where I thought, well, obviously these groups can't meet up because Nyx is supposed to bring about the end of the world, and Homegirl over here with the bronze lady or whatever, she's trying to like not have that happen. But where we are in the current moment, Nyx isn't trying to end the world, and so like how she's going to end the world doesn't really make a lot of sense. Which makes sense because it isn't a standalone. It is the first book in the Moonfall saga. But where this book ended, it definitely, like I said, we don't know how Nyx is going to end the world. We don't know if they're going to be ultimately successful. We don't know why the Earth rotating is going to stop anything that is currently in motion from finding its ultimate resolution. But for me, I just don't know if I care enough to continue. And it's not that I didn't like the characters, but the last third act, like I said, there was a reincarnation, resurrection situation that was tied to Nyx's past that didn't make a whole lot of sense. There was another character who was described as getting an axe to the head and like physically having to hold his head together. That person does not die. So there was a lot of stuff that happened at the end of the book that really just negated all of the goodwill that I had been building toward the story, because I was pleasantly surprised that I was enjoying this one as much as I was, because for as much as it was just a very stock standard fantasy, I was having a good time. Like I do think that there is an element to a quest narrative that can feel boring, and it can feel monotonous. Like I said earlier, I did think that we were going over things multiple times in a way that wasn't interesting, but I was still engaged with the text. Even when I wasn't having the world's best time, I was still like, I can understand. I understood why the narrative was doing the things that it was doing, and part of that was just how it was structured. But going forward from here, I was just kind of like, I really wish it had been like a duology, maybe. Um, but as anything more than that, I don't think I would be invested, because I think that there are so many things that could happen in this world that I'm good. So it's not a series that I'm going to rush out and continue, but I do recommend this book in a way that I don't think I was prepared to. I definitely think that the Monty that put it on the list was like, okay, I'm just gonna read this to get over it and like, move on with my life. It's one of the more recent arcs that I was sent. It's by a publisher that doesn't usually I don't usually get things from them. I don't always work with them. So like let's just do it to do it. And I walked away being pleasantly surprised. So I'm happy for me that it worked out, and I would recommend it. But that's kind of all I have to say on this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this part of the vlog here. I did some reading sprints. At this point, who knows when they'll be? Who knows when this video is going live? But I did some reading sprints, and I made it to 104, page 104 of Truth of the Divine by Lindsay Ellis. Now, I knew this going in when I made my little list. This is supposed to be, I forget the prompt. Well, let me not say that. I know what the prompt is. The prompt was supposed to be like a creature or an animal in the title. And when I was selecting this, I told y'all at the very beginning of this video, the very beginning, months and months ago, that some of the things that I chose for this are going to be a stretch. Because Buzzwordathon is supposed to be, again, it's supposed to be about the title of the thing or like the cover. And as you can see, the cover of this book doesn't really have a creature or an animal. The title of the book doesn't really have a creature or an animal. But I think that if we look at the word truth, that is an odd creature. It is an odd entity of the divine. What does that mean? Is there like a divine creature? Is it a reference to the aliens in the book? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. So this is what I'm reading. I'm reading this. I knew this was a sequel to Lindsay Ellis's first book, Axiom's End, which I don't really remember the finer details of. I know in this we were following Cora, who we are back again with over here. I knew that there were aliens, and I knew that like some shit had happened and the world didn't end, but we're gonna have to deal with aliens. And I was excited when I requested this, when I emailed St. Martin's, and I didn't actually think they were gonna send it to me, and then they did. So here we are. That's why we're here, because they did very clearly send this. But both of these I think are very interesting because neither one of them I think are like a joy to read. Like the book, like the prose on like a very like surface level is just kind of, it exists, which I think is a little hard. I won't say hard, but it is a little sad, especially in something as dry as science fiction. So far in Truth of the Divine, I think there has been like a small time jump. I'm not really gonna bother to try and investigate the like length of the time jump, but there is a little bit of a breaky break, it feels, and we are very much dealing with the ramifications that happened at the end of this. And I'm just moving too much from my webcam today. And so like I get it, like I understand that like we are dealing with the ramifications that happened and sort of like the aftershocks and the aftermath of the things that happened. But I just wish on like a prose level this was better. I do think that there was an announcement that there are going to be more books in this. I think it was originally going to be a trilogy, and I think there was an announcement that there's going to be 5 books. Based on like what is happening, I think that you could very much like write a continuation, because it's not so much, at least Axiom's End wasn't so much like an alien invasion novel, and it was very much, it was a first contact, but then it was like a government conspiracy kind of, but also like a little bit of a monster romance. Like it was a weird grab bag of things. Like what I thought I was gonna get when I read the synopsis and like what I got after reading it was a little bit disconnected. And so like I don't really quite know what to make of the first 100 pages of Truth of the Divine, other than it has been a lot of like catching people up, which I appreciate because I wasn't going to reread Axiom's End. So I appreciate being caught up, and I appreciate the vague reminders, but also clearly moving the narrative forward. But as for like an overarching plot moment, that's kind of where the book is losing me, because I don't know if there is, I don't know if there is one, and I don't know if I want there to be one, but I am looking for like literally anything to like, I don't want to say pull me through, but I am looking for anything to like kind of latch on to. And I think that there's going to be eventually this kind of a discussion about like what it means to be a person, and like this interesting like philosophical discussion and exploration of all these like various like very like humanity, and not like humanity and like the people of the world, but like what does it mean when we say someone has humanity, like they're an inner humanity. Like maybe that's what we're gonna go for. We're gonna see as far as like as does it compare to the first book? Sure. I think that both books give the same vibes. They feel very much connected to one another. So I appreciate that. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. The back of this book is promising some thrilling and gut-wrenching moments. Um Truth of the Divine will put your expectation in its crosshairs and then nuke them from orbit. That's a very big statement, Mr. Jason Paragon. Don't know you, never heard of you. Apparently, he's a New York Times bestselling author. So I'm gonna go because I still have like 17 minutes in this sprint. So I'm gonna attempt to actually read something. But so far, I don't know. It's not the best thing I've read for this project, but it's also not the worst. I haven't decided if I'm gonna like try and rank these at the end, but if I was going to rank them, it's very much in the middle. It's giving a meh, it's giving you know, like okay, interesting, 2.5 stars. Yeah, 2.5 stars so far. So I'm well past the 50% mark. I'm on page 386, and at first I wasn't gonna come and update in the middle of this because it is a sequel, and this video is already long as fuck. But I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna talk a little bit about this because this book has been all over the place. We definitely got a plot where we were trying to avoid one of the characters that we thought was dead that had like ended. They weren't gonna be here going forward. We found out isn't actually dead, and so we found out that we were still looking for that character that was presumed dead. But instead, what we've had is a really personal novel about like what does it mean to be a person, who gets to claim personhood, what are the parameters around which personhood can be applied. We have a lot of discussions surrounding that. Then we have a subplot where we are having a violent, maybe a violent insurrection, which is interesting. I mean, this book is set in like the early 2000s, so it's not like, whew, like super close to home, but we are very much, you know, there is something of a threat disturbance level associated with this book. But the part that's really taking me out of it right now is this relationship that has been brewing over the course of the novel between Cora and Keva. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. Keve? I don't think it's Keve. I think it's Keva. Where he is like 30 years, I don't think he's 30 years older, but he's significantly older than Cora. He's like, you know, mid 30s or so, and she's like 19, I think, maybe 21, somewhere in there. She's very young. Well, not very young, but there was a line where he's old enough to be her father, so at least double her age, right? To be comfortable. We know that he is successful. He's an author. He is a journalist. He appeared in the first book. I don't think the relationship is really established in the first book, other than she was aware of him having worked with her absentee father. And in this one, like I said, they have this romantic connection that has like really been a driving force in the book that I did not see coming. It's been handled pretty well, but it's also complicated by the fact that Keva has a relationship with one of the other amygdalans. Um, it was Enola, and now it's going by Nicola. So they have a relationship dynamic, and of course, Cora and Ampersand have a dynamic, but Ampersand has been like pretty much benched for the entirety of this book while he is going on looking for this character that we all thought was dead. Then we also have moments of Cora dealing with the trauma that happened at the end of Axiom's End, which is wild. But the part that is killing me right now is that Keva and Nicola have had this discussion about maybe going to space and like repopulating the human race, because spoiler alert, humanity as we know it on Earth with the humans may be coming to an end far sooner than anybody thought was going to happen. And instead of like taking the amygdalans, let me unplug my computer, taking the amygdalans up on this offer, we see that they're getting Cora into Colombia. So like she can go to college and finish her degree. And it's like, you were definitely told that you have like 5 years of humanity left, and you want your new girlfriend, sugar baby, to go get a college degree when humanity as we know it has like 15 years. And that's if you're super unlucky. At best, humanity would be over in your lifetime, so definitely within Cora's lifetime. It's a weird decision, and it feels like it's coming out of left field, and it definitely is continuing this notion of, I have no idea where this book is going, where the series is going, but I like it. Like, it's there have been so many twists and turns and things that I wouldn't have predicted or wouldn't have, thought to include, that are just really working a little bit for me in this one. It's not by no means a 5-star read, but I would give it a solid 4, I think. I don't know. I have less than 100 pages at this point, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and stop talking and get back to the little sprinty sprint. But I just had to come in and say that this book is so unlike everything that I thought it was going to be. But it is very much, let me not say that actually. It very much is reminiscent of the reading experience that I had with Axiom's End. And I am looking forward to whatever book 3 is. So thank you to St. Martin. Thank you to St. Martin's Press for sending this my way, because I'm very much looking. I'm sad I didn't get to it sooner, but I'm very much looking forward to whatever comes out next. So I finished Truth of the Divine yesterday with Erin on her live sprints, and in my spreadsheet I wound up giving this 4 out of 5 stars, which is wild because I went back and I was looking, and in 2019 when I read the first book, I gave that book 2 out of 5 stars, which, if I were to reread it today, I think I would also give it 4 out of 5, because ultimately I found that both books were incredibly consistent in terms of, like, the writing is pretty mundane, it's very straightforward, it's very dry. There's not a lot there that I found, I want to say I didn't enjoy it, but there wasn't a lot to, like, really sink your teeth into in terms of, like, really inventive uses of sentence structure, or the way that certain elements of the story were incorporated. It was just like, these are sentences. So on that level, I do wish that, like, it had been a tad better, but overall, at the end of the day, I didn't hate it. Moving on from sentence construction, what we got is a lot of what I said that I was getting, like, the vibes, and that was a very small story in the terms of, like, the grander narrative. There was this sense of, like, okay, the character we thought was dead isn't dead, and then we thought that, like, the world was going to end, and then we were getting this romance between Kava and Cora, and where that went and what happened with that relationship took another, like, really hard left turn. I do think that it was, like, foreshadowed, and I do think that it worked for what was happening, but overall, I have questions, Lindsay. I have some questions. But like I said, I did give it 4 out of 5 stars, so I am looking forward to whatever book 3 is. I don't know if we're actually going to build toward what I think we're going to. I think that we very much could. I think that it's definitely a possibility, but I don't know. I think that both with this and with Axiom's End, I was looking for something that was going to be like a more grand narrative, and both of these books take what could be really grand narratives and distill them into something that feels very intimate and feels relatively low stakes, even though the stakes in both novels, like the ramifications of what is happening, is very, very large. Here we do, throughout the entire book, there are these, like, mixed media interstitials, so we have, like, emails and chat logs and various, like, news articles and things, and there's very much, I think I talked about this in one of my updates, but there is, like, this really, like, undercurrent of, like, an insurrection and, like, government overthrow, and I think that's also going to be something that plays out as the series continues. I don't know if it's going to, like, take center stage, because I'm getting that all of these narratives are going to be, like I said, more intimate, more narrow in their scope, but I think that it's definitely a possibility, and I'm curious to see how that's going to ultimately play out over. However, I want to say it's been discussed that this is going to be 5 books, but I know that we're at least getting 3. I know we're at least getting 1 more, and so I am looking forward to it, and I am interested to see where it goes. I think that each time I read one of these books, I have to like readjust my expectations, because I do think that we're going to get like these really epic stories, and then we just don't. But I did enjoy it. I did like it, even when I was confused and I didn't understand like what we were doing or why we were doing something. I was having a good time. So I don't know. I think that if you are like me, you might enjoy this, but I am so inconsistent that I don't know if that's enough for some people. But at the very least, I do recommend at least picking it up from your local library. Once again, thank you to Macmillan for sending me a copy. I will definitely be in the inbox, in the not the DMs. I will send an email. I'll be professional, but I will look forward to sending another email asking for book 3, and I do look forward to picking up a finished copy for myself, so that it'll match my hardback. But I don't know when that's gonna happen because of my book buying ban. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Do recommend it. Do recommend the series, specifically because I do think that a lot of the interpersonal conversations I think are handled really well, both between Kava and the alien that he was kind of bonded to, Nicola, and even though you know what, I'm going to say this. I didn't like how Ampersand was so, like, just sidelined for the entirety of this novel. That really did actually bother me, and I was looking for more of him the entire time that I was reading this. I don't understand why they were so sidelined. I mean, I kind of understand why, but I don't know, that in retrospect and even in the moment, that bothered me a lot, because I was looking forward to getting to explore more of Ampersand, specifically based on what Ampersand was doing in this novel, and then also in terms of the ramifications and the things that he was dealing with, or they were dealing with, outside of the first one. There was a section of the book that was really interesting where it was talking about gender and alien life forms, and it was that part of the book is going to stick out with me the most, along with this undercurrent of just like white nationalism trying to overthrow the United States government. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to see where this goes. The alternative history, the alternative America that Ellis has crafted for the series. I still cannot pronounce this series name. I think it's Numena. I don't know, but the alternative America that she's crafted for this, I feel, it feels too close. There's a senator in this, and I'm just like, a Senate? Did I say senator correctly? I don't know. Hopefully editing Monty didn't make me look like an idiot. But there's a senator in this book that I feel like we could pluck out and put him in the Senate that we have, and he would fit right in. And I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But I'm actually gonna go, so I don't get this video too long. But yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Do recommend the series. It's definitely, I don't think this is a series for everybody. I don't even know if this is a series for people who are like die-hard science fiction fans. But I do think that if you are looking to get into science fiction, this is a good place to start, because we do have aliens. But it is, like I said, it's set in an America that is very reminiscent of an America that you already know, and that if you're my age, you kind of lived in, because it's set in the early aughts. And I think it could work for you. There isn't a lot of like stuff in space, like that's not a big part of the series so far. So if you don't want like space based science fiction, but you do kind of want an alien subject matter, I think that this is a series to look into. Might be worth your shot. The first book is only like, it's not that long. Both of these books are under 500 pages, I would say. Well, this one definitely is. It's like 480, because the epilogue part isn't counted. Like, there's no pages there, but it ends on page 469. So I think it could be worth your while if you want science fiction that's not too long, that is easy to get into, but again, it is a little dry. It's a little crunchy, but it is what it is. the writing to me, it doesn't bother me. So yeah, I'm actually gonna go now. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again in the next little mini vlog. What is up, you guys? This is like the end of the video. Like this book is for, I think it's the month of November. So the prompt is a word that ends in ing, or has ing in the title of the book somewhere. And so I'll be reading My Wife is Missing by DJ Palmer. This is coming out next month. I'm filming this in April, but I started filming this in February. So who knows? Who knows when this video itself. But this book is out on May 10th, 2022, unless there are, supply chain issues, in which case it won't be out then. But they sent me a nice copy, a physical copy. The little bear that's been chilling in my videos was also sent by the lovely people over at St. Martin's Press. I haven't started reading this yet, so I hate that for me, but hopefully I enjoy this. This is supposed to be a crime novel. I'm gonna go with crime novel on the off chance it's not really mystery suspense thriller, because I feel like I've read so many books that were sold to me as thrillers that aren't really thrillers. They're just mystery suspense. I mean, they're just crime novels. So here we are following a man named Michael, whose wife Natalie, he thinks has been like abducted or, whisked away out of their family vacations hotel room in New York City. But then it's quickly realized that homegirl was not abducted, the children were not abducted, that she left with the children. And the back of the book doesn't tell me why. And we're just going to go from there. So the wife is going to be missing. I'm going to be reading this. My goal is to actually read this in a day, which isn't too ambitious. At the time of reading this, I just finished rereading The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, which is longer. This book is only 374 pages. That's the acknowledgments. The actual book ends on page 372. I have read half of My Wife is Missing. I'm on chapter 25. I just threw it at my computer, but everything's still recording. And I'm having a really good time. It's giving sort of Gone Girl vibes, not entirely, not exactly, not precisely, but just a tad. Just like a teeny tiny taste of a Gone Girl. Even though, again, like the things are different because Homegirl has not like faked her death. She just has run away with the children. But we're good. So we're following two main characters. We have Michael, whose storyline is entirely in the present after his wife has vanished. And then we also have Natalie's chapters. We have Natalie before she disappeared and Natalie after she's disappearing. And we know that Natalie was thinking that her husband Michael was having an affair. And I think Michael actually was having an affair. But there's also this unreliable narrator aspect where Natalie was having some hallucinations maybe, and she was suffering from insomnia, and it was like very severe insomnia. And so like maybe Michael was having an affair, but maybe some of the stuff that she thought Michael was doing, he actually wasn't doing. Either way, it's good. I'm having a good time. I'm entertained for sure, and it's good. It's a good time. I don't know where the story is going, but I am invested. I do predict this is going to be at least a 4-star read. It might get to a 5-star. I think that if you've read a lot of crime fiction, because I don't really think it's a mystery or kind of a thriller, I don't know. It's giving me very like police procedural. Like it could easily fit into a couple episodes of your favorite like police cop show. So and 2 is very generous, because I do think you could get this done in a single 45-minute episode, but maybe you need a 90-minute crossover event or something, right? So I'm having a good time if like that's the vibe. If you really like twisty, edge of your seat thrillers that are like what's happening, or like really intricately plotted mysteries, I don't think this is going to be for you. But if you just like really solid crime fiction, I think this is it. I think this is it. The characters are interesting. It's fast paced. There's this whole plot where Natalie thinks that Michael is cheating with the girl that she works with, which is ironic because she was going to use this girl to set up her husband so she could like get proof. So like there's a lot of like mess that's happening in the background of these chapters, and Michael has definitely done something. And Michael knows that he's done something, and he's trying to like hide that he's done something from the people in his life and from the reader. So like there's a couple layers here. I don't think it's like the most deep, you know. I don't think it's, like I said, it's not intricately plotted, but it's a really solid time. And overall, I'm happy. I'm happy with the Past Monty that told St. Martin's to send this to me, because sometimes Past Monty be like, yeah, publishing house, please send me that book. And then I'm looking in the mirror like, bitch, what did you do? And I don't think I'm gonna be like that this time. I'm gonna go. I'll check back in once I have finished My Wife is Missing, and I will give you an update at that time. In my last update, I told you guys that this book was not twisty-turny. It was just a solid little crime novel. And then the last 50% was like twisty-turny. However, I do think that the twists and the turns were worth it, and they were like, it made sense, and the breadcrumbs were there, and if you cared to like figure it out, you could have figured it out. And yeah, I love it. I'm giving this book 5 stars. 5 out of 5 stars to Mr. DJ Palmer. I don't know if I'm going to go back and read The Perfect Daughter, which is, you know, another book that this person has written, but it was really solid. The characters were great. Natalie and Michael, I thought both of them were really compelling. Michael is also in working with this like cop from New York, and like that person, that character was really great. The children, could have left them at home. They don't really they don't really do much, like, but they are children, so like what are they really gonna do? But yeah, it was really solid, and the writing was there, and I had a really entertaining time. I still don't know if you are an avid reader of mystery thrillers, if you're gonna get anything out of this that you wouldn't have gotten out of something else. I do still think the Gone Girl comparisons are worth it, both in that if you liked Gone Girl, you might like this, but also I did not like Gone Girl. I thought that Amy was an idiot, and her plan literally made no sense, and she should have been caught. And I was reading it like, girl, this doesn't make sense. I don't believe that she could get away with this. And Natalie's plan was like similar in some aspects, but I didn't find that it was like, it wasn't overplanned, and it wasn't like she was doing the most. It felt very reasonable, and it felt like she was fucking up. Like, there were times where her plan, like, it was so bad that she was almost caught, you know? And so I felt that it was realistic in that way. It wasn't plotted to be like, oh, I'm the master, you're never gonna find me. Because even Natalie was aware that like, yeah, like you could still find me. Like you could, like it's still very possible for you to do this. And I do think that it helped that Natalie wasn't really trying to frame Michael for murder. She was really just trying to get away. And so that eliminated a lot of like the super like specific details that you would need to do to frame somebody for murder or whatever. And so Natalie, she beats Amy Dunn. I still do think that this would make like a really good episode of a television like crime procedural. I don't know if I would need like a full adaptation of this, but I would watch it. I do think that it's cinematic. I do think that you could get a solid 90-minute movie. I wouldn't want to watch anything that was like really close to 2 hours about this, but definitely solid. Maybe on Lifetime would eat this up. It was just really good. It was a really good time, and I do recommend it. It is out, like I said, on May 10th. Yes, May 10th. So whether you're watching this before May 10th or after May 10th, solid time here. But that's all I have to say about this one, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna let future Monty take over again. What is up, you guys? It's the last video. So it's the last video. So last vlog moment for the video. And for this prompt, the month of December, I believe it was like counting words. And so I didn't have an arc that had counting. like, you know, first, second, third, one, two, three. So I went with every single lie because single I felt was close enough. Actually, a little bit gagged that I haven't seen more people talk about this because it's really good so far. I'm 34% of the way through the book, and it starts off with our main character, Beckett. I don't remember her last name. I know it starts with a B. But our main character, Beckett, has broken up with her boyfriend, Jake, and so she is like trying to give him back his stuff. And there's a kerfuffle, and it's a little bit embarrassing. And so she goes to the girls' locker room to kind of hide out because it's being remodeled, and so no one will bother her in there. Only when she gets there, she discovers a dead baby in a duffel bag. So, definite trigger warnings for birth, not birth, but death of like a newborn baby. The book is all about who gave birth to this baby, how the baby died, like, was the baby murdered? Like, that is very much a core component, as is cyberbullying, as our main character Beckett is assumed to have been the one. I mean, the reader knows that she did not give birth to this baby, or it's, you know, presented in that way, and like maybe in the finale it'll be like plot twist. I doubt that's gonna happen because like we you know, like we read, but you know, you can never trust an author not to try and do something super crazy. So the book is about this baby that has died for who knows how or why or when. And Beckett is assumed by her fellow students to be the person who like actually gave birth to this baby and is just pretending that she didn't. And so she's being harassed online, and she is kind of trying to figure out who did it. But she's a little bit, I don't want to say she's a little bit more concerned with other things, but it's not like she is full force investigating this thing. She is just, you know, living her life, and at the same time kind of piecing it together, but it's not, I don't know. It's the investigating that she is doing is working for me in a way that sometimes investigative stuff doesn't work for me in YA thrillery type stories. So I'm having a good time with it. And I think that because this book, I mean, maybe because it's such a heavy topic, like this baby, maybe that's why this wasn't as big on BookTube. But I feel like there's definitely an audience for this book. It's very interesting. We're getting to see relationship being explored with her mother and her complicated home life because her father was an addict and he has passed away, and so it's like just her single mom and her like two siblings. And then again, you have this complicated relationship that she had with the boyfriend that she broke up with because she's suspected him of cheating, but maybe he wasn't really cheating and she just kind of jumped the gun a little bit. And where I'm at in the story, she's kind of suspecting other people close to her of being involved in the situation that's going on with this baby. And it's just really good. The writing, the narrative voice is like really strong, and it's hitting me all in the feels. Like from the first couple of pages, I was like, this is a 5-star book. He's like a 4-star book. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm reading a book and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a 5-star book, and then we get to the end and I'm like, never mind. But here I'm like, the voice is so strong that you would have to really be like pulling something out of left field for this to go downhill in a way that I don't appreciate when we finally do get to the conclusion. So overall, I'm confused as to why this wasn't more beloved on this platform. Kind of the same way that like Tom Ryan's books are just completely swept under the rug. Both Keep This to Yourself and I Hope You're Listening are astounding. When you get the chance that he co-authored with somebody else was like his lighthearted book, that wasn't a mystery. It was just kind of like a fun road trippy pride, like going to, you know, a pride festival book. Like that was fun. I don't think it was as good as his like murder mysteries, but again, like Tom Ryan is like also kind of just like sitting there floating under the radar, which I think is a little bit criminal. And I think Rachel Vincent is sitting there right there with him, where y'all are eating up these other thrillery mystery type books, and these ones are just kind of sitting here like, what about me? So I'm here to tell you to go read those, both the Time Ryan books and potentially this one as well. I did it. Joe, we did it. It has been months in the making, mini a live reading sprint, many a day spent listening to audiobooks at, 2 times, 2.5 times, 3 times speed, but we did it. And I have finally finished Every Single Lie by Rachel Vincent. And I have to say, Bloomsbury, I don't know who was in charge of the marketing of this book. Don't know who was. But I feel like a ball was dropped somewhere because this book only has 288 reviews on Goodreads. It's been out for a year. And I can say that y'all sent me this book. You gave me NetGalley access, and it did take me over a year to read it. So I accept some responsibility here, you know? But I don't think I have ever maybe it has been. Maybe it was featured on the Bloomsbury Instagram page. But I feel like when I'm on Instagram and I see Bloomsbury pop up, it'd be the same 4 people that y'all be pushing. We got Miss Joanne, even though she raggedy. You get Sarah, because it's Sarah. So Sister Sarah is on there. Madeline Miller occasionally, sometimes. And Miss Bridget. Miss Kimmerer, her little curse breaker. Her other, she like out here foraging stars or some shit. I think it's like vampires. I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. So like the 4 people I see. I've occasionally seen Phil Stamper when he puts out a book. Although y'all did him dirty with those ugly little sunglasses. But like I don't think I've ever seen Every Single Lie by Rachel Vincent. And this was a 5 out of 5 star book. 5 out of 5 stars. The fact that mystery, thrillers, small towns, like this hits so many people's boxes. So many people's boxes. And it hasn't, I don't ever see people talk about it. It feels like such a miscarriage of justice was happening here. And again, I take my part because y'all gave me access and I haven't talked about it. But like I said in the first intro to me talking about this situation, I knew from the very beginning of this book it was going to be 5 out of 5 stars. There is something about the way the narration was written. I was instantly engaged. I was here for every twist and turn. Again, all of the investigative parts of the novel felt very organic. They made sense. I was there with Beck as she was doing her little, as she was kind of like fit the puzzle pieces together that she had. And when we were, given more puzzle pieces, I was putting them together the same way that she was. It didn't feel forced or like, what are you doing, girl? It was very logical. I do think that I was ahead of the book in terms of like the final twist and turns. But I do think that that was a twist and a turn that Rachel Vincent had laid out for the reader. I think that it was very clear and very purposefully done for the reader to be like, this is what's going to happen. And I respected the fact that Rachel didn't try and like pull the rug out with some stupid out of left field bullshit. And so it's a 5 star read. 5 star read. If you can get past the fact that this book really deals with the impact that this dead baby has on the small town in Tennessee, if you can read a book with that kind of subject matter at the very heart of it, and you can deal with reading about our main character Beck being bullied online and harassed and that kind of background noise happening, read this book. I can't imagine someone picking this up and not having a good feels, again, because this is such like heavy material, but the experience of the book was just great. It was great. And it was compulsively readable. I always wanted to keep going. I wanted to get to the end. This is everything that it ticked all of my boxes. So while I do feel upset that it took me so long to get here, I also feel like it feels like this book is being robbed. The people are not discussing this book because that's just how good it is. It's just, it's on another level. So yeah, I had a really great time. The writing was great. The characters were great. All of the characters, not even Beck, but her brother, her little sister, her ex-boyfriend, her best friend, her mother, the ways in which the small town felt like a real place. It was just a good time. I need to stop saying just, but it was good. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I recommend it. I highly recommend it, actually. If you haven't read it and you like YA thrillery, mystery, small town books, I mean, calling it like a thriller mystery isn't like, it feels out of place. because it's not like going to take you on any kind of wild ride. But I mean, there is a mystery. No one there's a mystery of like how this baby found its way into this locker room. So there's like a mystery component, but it's really about this small town and this family, and it's good. It's a good time. So I do recommend it. And I want to thank all of you, one, for being so patient with this video. I want to say thank you to all of the publishers who provided me with copies of books. Without all of you, this video would not be possible. So thank you to all of y'all. Really appreciate it. Y'all really did me a solid there. And thank you to the audience for getting to the end of this video, because I know it was really long, both in terms of when I started talking about it on Twitter and the actual length that you had to sit through. Although there are also chapter times in the description. So maybe, maybe you've been clicking around and only watching the discussions that you were excited to see me talk about. But if you did watch all, however long this winds up being, you're the real one. I love that for you, because this was inspired by Kayla over at, Books and Lala, her little thing. I'm gonna say, let's drop this little headstone emoji, kind of like the literally dead book club situation, the little logo. We'll do that for the emoji. But I'll see you guys again soon in another video. But until then, and until next time.